This is going to be another episode of Summoning Insight. Different from usual. I won't immediately talk about TSM. Spoiler, I won't be at all. They're not even in the playoffs, the LCS, are they? It's done. Guess what? It's a few months till the TSM conversation.
Well, probably Cloud9 is going to win this series. There is, after watching those 100 Thieves games, a lot of questions about this team. And I think that with, those level of odds, you're looking at Gold Guards can definitely win this series, right? Because it looks from my observations that basically Cloud9 is mental boom right now. I mean, they lost their last couple of games of the regular split, including a best of 1 to 100 Thieves, and then they lost 0-3 to 100 Thieves. They also got owned by FlyQuest to end the season. So I think this team is just mentally done. I think they are completely checked out at this point in time. And we can talk about some of the issues that might be cropping up. Now, a lot of people will point to Summit's horrendous play, the horrendous picks.
That line was unreal. If you've never seen his stat line for real, is some shit like, one kill, 20 on death. It's some really bad. It's almost as bad as the humanoid 3-game one that we're going to come to later in LEC. It's really bad, guys. It isn't just he didn't. It's not like he just played average and didn't take over the game. He actively fed these games. It was really bad. It was really bad. There was even, by the way, as if you wanted to set up LS to be triggered, because obviously he's watching his former team. The guy even fucking fed on Renekton, for God's sake. It's like he was trying to check off all the bingo. This is mental. This is one thing, though, by the way, to segue into. That's one thing we have to discuss about Summit, though. The one problem is this, Monty, is it was all well and good when he was styling on everyone in NA because he was so far ahead of everyone. It didn't really matter what he picked. But actually, you've even seen it now. Dude, he does have a ridiculously reductive champion pool. He essentially does refuse to go outside of his comfort picks that he wants to play, whether for good or for ill in this case.
So I think there's several things that we can discuss here because... Okay, I think just from the perspective of Summit, he has been hard carrying many of the games that Cloud9 has played, right? He deservedly should win the MVP of the regular season. But at the same time, it looks like he was pretty exposed by 100 Thieves in their best of 1 because then FlyQuest copied the Jace Nar bans. And the problem is really that no one else is able to step up in these scenarios where he's getting 2 target bans, and it's probably very frustrating from his perspective.
Which is weird because every fucking all LCS voting had Fudge top 2. So what's the problem, Monty? All we do is this, right? Think about it logically. Here's how analysis works. So it's actually logical, by the way, that of all the teams to have a chance, 100 Thieves will be one. Guess what? Fucking some days, most people's number 2 or number 3. He's actually one of the few players that matches up. But here's the problem, guys. I didn't see a fucking single person in the world put Abidagif. Actually, that's wrong. I think High put Abidagif first. That's it. So logically, doesn't matter. Fudge just styles on Abidagi and we're right back in the series. He didn't, by the way. Spoiler, that has never happened ever. And I still don't know. I get triggered by the Bjergsen one. But that's because I think people are going off name value. I don't even know what they're going off with the Fudge angle, mate. I think this guy's just he's done an all right job as a mid laner. He's not a star player. He's not some carry or something. You saw in this series, there's nothing he can do, mate. He's just trying to play the champion out. He's not going to hard carry the game.
I think he's very supportive towards the side lanes, but people have to step up in these scenarios in order to actually win the game, right? Sure. And Blabber wasn't able to do it even on potential carry picks like Jungle Diana. Berserker wasn't able to do it when he gets Zeri. So if they get high priority picks, because you have to understand that Cloud9 is going to get high priority picks if you ban Jace and Gnar when 100 Thieves is on red side. You are going to get a first pick blue that has incredible value, and that has to come through somehow. But a lot of the problem is that Summit, look, he might be an open rebellion with this team. He seems unwilling to do a lot of the things that need to be done, because if you take their game 2 draft, for example, where they are going to go ahead and pick the early Zeri for Berserker, and indeed Berserker had a pretty good game on Zeri overall. The problem is that you're blinding the Renekton here, right? And when you do these things, it becomes really problematic for how you play out these matches, because he's just not going to do a whole lot, especially when you can get some counter picks in, when they can play the Victor in the mid lane, when they have this extremely tanky front line of...
When, like you say, you're blinding a Renekton, and then you're looking at their comp, they've got Victor, a feat good job going into that. That's going to be fun. You're just going to get your head smashed in when you're going in, aren't you? It's going to be shit.
I mean, there's so many problems.
Try and get to that back line. It's going to be fun.
There's so many money problems. Like,
You know what I mean?
but you can do other things if you're Cloud9. Like, you don't have to value the Renekton pick this much, but Summit doesn't appear willing to play kind of tanky frontliners, such as, because right here, if they had the Ornn, if they had the Gragas, we're talking about a kind of very different style of game. You have adequate engage at that point in time, and you have kind of a meat shield for the Diana, Ryze, and Zeri to do a lot of damage. But Renekton is just never going to close the gap in the team fights with this composition, and there's just I mean, if he does, he just gets kicked out by Lee Sin, basically. So
this is why I'm disturbed, though, because this genuinely implies that we're at the playoffs. And by the way, remember, I know they haven't done great in the split, but 100 Thieves is supposed to be one of your championship contenders. They're not chopped liver, you know, they're a real team. And this guy's playing as though he's just playing for lane, like we're in season 3 or something, dude. Like, there's no way this Renekton pick was for the actual team fight. This is like, he just thinks, I am going to smash this lane or some whack shit. Like, that's a really weird thought for a fucking superstar player to have in the modern day, I feel like. How are you supposed to coach her on that, you know?
Yeah, and like, I mean, there's just so many issues.
And I'm definitely with you as well, by the way. The other thing that this exposed was, it's not just on Summit. When he isn't able to take over the game, how can the rest of the whole team fall apart? Like, this is a team loaded with stars, like you said. Blabber, fucking Berserker. That's before, by the way, we've even gotten to people like Fudge and Winsome, who had very respectable, like, all LCS voting, etc. Like, this is supposed to be a super team, but when Summit wasn't good, it just became a fucking average team, mate. This wasn't a super team at all.
This is why I think they're just completely mentally boom. And like, I think it's very difficult for people are casting a lot of blame here. Like, people are saying, oh, Max Waldo, who's the new head coach. Okay. But, you know, if Summit, you have to remember, and I'm not saying Summit did this, like did the whole, like, let's lock in a champ without the coach thing that got TSM players. You know. It does look like it from the outside, but at the very least, like, you're in a really tough situation as a coach if Summit's sitting there in draft saying, I want to play Renekton, because you only have two choices. You either let him play Renekton or you force him to play something he doesn't want to play and he tilts off the face of the earth. So It's really hard, and it's not ever one person's decision. Now, we could ask ourselves, how is the situation avoided? I think there is a Korean cultural problem here. So Max Waldo is 21 years old and is the head coach of this team. Summit is older. In Korean culture, I think there's no way that Summit listens to Max Waldo, because the age hierarchy is incredibly important. And for Summit to respect Max Waldo enough to allow him to select his champions, I think would be unlikely, especially if Summit is already unhappy with how things are going on within the team. And that was one of the big...
very young for a coach in general, let's be real.
It's really young for a head coach, guys. You know,
understandably, he wasn't picked for it. Yes, we know he had to come in last minute, but even so, like, it's the reality. Yeah,
I think it would be different, say, if Mithy was still on Cloud9, because Mithy has been a top-tier competitor before. Summit would know who he is. Mithy is older. But I think that could be actually a pretty significant factor in what is going on with Cloud9 right now. Because it doesn't appear like anything's working, and Summit wants to play a very specific way within the game, which is that all the resources go into Summit. But at the same time, he just seems like he's completely checked out of this process. Like, it's also just the way he's playing, which is just like ludicrously disrespectful. We saw it. Yeah, we saw it in the first game of the series, where it's obvious what Lee Sin is going to do in terms of ganking top lane at like 3 minutes into the game. He's just pushed up with a giant stacked wave into Sunday's turret, and it's just an easy gank. And this is a game where Summit looks super tilted. He ends up going 0-7-0 in this game. And you know what's wild to me, Thorin, is that the Cloud9's response to this game is to run back the exact same composition that they just got completely bodied with in a 26-minute game. And yes, they did better the second time around, but there's still exactly the same problems, because 100 Thieves just runs back the same comp as well. And people will point, like, there's been a lot of talk about what is the Ryze Victor matchup and why is it so terrible, right, for the Ryze player. Right now, if you just look at the top tier leagues in the world, so like the major regions, right, and you look at the Ryze Victor matchup, it has been played in 32 different games. Now, should be said that most of these were like on earlier patches. They were earlier in the spring. But Victor only has, or Rise only has an 18% win rate across these 32 games versus the Victor. And we saw the opposite of that in the LCK finals where Faker was playing Rise and T1 was highly prioritizing Rise and they won into the Victor. But it requires kind of an expertise in macro and a willingness to sacrifice from the mid lane and like really use Realm Warp early to try and make plays in the side lanes that we haven't seen from many teams playing this matchup. So it's mostly about not trying to team fight the Victor because you have a lot of problems. You know, when you're trying to Realm Warp in, you can literally, I mean, the Victor can just put down the W on the Realm Warp and your team comes in and is stunned. Or you put the Chaos Storm, the ult, on top of the Realm Warp and your team just takes a huge amount of damage, right? And so if you're trying to play the 5v5, I think that is why the win rate is very low. You have to play it more like a pick champion or a split pushing champion in order to have success. However, most teams see like, oh, Rise is a big, he's a very durable frontliner. He can output a lot of damage, so we want to play him in the 5v5. But in this particular matchup, I think you do have to play it differently. And if you want an example of that, simply go watch the first game of the LCK finals between T1 and Gen.G. But if you are not good enough to think ahead in terms of your macro game, sacrifice waves in the mid lane to make the side lane plays, kind of use it to reposition in a way where the Victor can't punish you with Victor's abilities, you're going to just have a really fucking bad time. And you can't run at the Victor either because you're too short range and you just get poked out. And that's exactly what we see, in these two games. But if Cloud9 thinks that running back that draft...
There's a moment in game 2 that I'll link to on Twitter because it just has to be seen to me. It's so funny. Like, you would literally think this was set up as like a punked sketch to make LS mad because he so famously hates Renekton as a pick. Right? It's in game 2 and it's at around 30 minutes when they're having a fight near the dragon. And Summit just fucking takes the Realm Warp on his own behind them to try and flank and just gets instantly fucking deleted in like 0.5 seconds. It's mental. Like, like the way you see his health bar just shredded straight down. You can exactly see. Like, that's why I said it's like a setup because it's like, what do you think Ellis is going to say aside from like, what is it? It's doing nothing. Like, because by definition, it was doing nothing. Like, it's like I said, imagine trying to run into a fucking like Victor and Aphelios, like point blank. Like, that's going to be fun. Yeah.
Well, the other thing, Thorin, is like, he was behind. He's gonna die instantly, right?
Yeah, of course.
But the funny shit, he's not really built tank. He's like Gore Drinker and then Death Dance. So he's like kind of tanky. He's like lifesteal tanky, I guess. But, he can be just, you can blow him up pretty fast, right? So the funny thing is that Cloud9 wasn't wrong to do that. How else are you going to get him in there? The problem is that that is the best case scenario. Like what they did was the best case scenario, and they still got their ass kicked. So
the problem is it just proves that you could never have won against that competent team fight as far as I can tell. Like, what more do you want? Yeah, you're right, Monty. You have actually transported him to their back line. He's on them. But he's dead instantly, so guess what? Probably wasn't the right pick for that fucking... Come on, Summit. Come on, man. Because the problem here is, right, normally, remember, the angle for someone who dominates an LCS goes like this. Yes, they dominated LCS, but how will they do it nationally? Motherfucker, you're not even at MSI yet. This was round 1 of the LCS playoffs. Like, if you're having problems here, it's going to get worse. Like, this was supposed to be where you were supposed to have problems later in the playoffs. It's the opening round, for fuck's sake. I don't know. It's pretty good to me.
You have to think about how this composition would work in actuality, right? Which is like, what is a best case use of the Cloud9 composition? And the best case use is they have priority around an objective and the enemy team composition is walking into them. But if you ever have to engage, what the fuck are you going to do? You cannot engage with Rise ult because of unless you're playing around cooldowns of like Rise W or Victor W, which is like, that's hard to do. Like, frankly, that's very hard to do. Or you think you're going to get some incredible Diana engage, which, again, with an Ornn and a Nautilus standing in front seems really unlikely. Maybe you can flash for it, but it's pretty easy for 100 Thieves not to group because there is no real flank danger here coming in from Cloud9. So, like, you can spread out pretty easily, make it very difficult for the Diana to engage. And even if you do get a Diana ult, what is the ideal follow-up here? Like a Renata ult, maybe? But is that going to hit? It moves pretty slowly. Like the Diana,
seems pretty bad at landing those, actually.
If she has to flash in, If the Diana has to flash in, the odds that the Renata is in range to get that ultimate off are really low unless the Renata also flashes. And then again, you still have to get through the tank line. Like front to back fighting is very, very difficult. So this composition is just a turd. Like it's just terrible. I don't know where it came from. It seems like it was read very well by 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves played very well over this series, although I don't think that Cloud9 made it particularly challenging, which is why the upcoming matchup between 100 Thieves and Team Liquid is actually interesting.
I've got another question for you. So here's another problem, Monty. As soon as you finished talking about Summit, actually for most people, it wasn't even Blabber. Most people went to Berserker, and they were saying, "Oh, he's also like unstoppable." Like like obviously it was between him and Hans Sama, who the best all LCS player was. Dude, where the fuck was he in this series? He got what is supposed to be a really strong pick every single game. Zeri. He wasn't fucking carrying these games. Like, mate, that gets banned out against fucking elite Asian players. Like, this guy's just giving him it. They're just cool with him playing it, apparently. Like, the whole Cloud9 team didn't turn up in this match.
I do think Berserker played well in the second game.
Okay.
I think Winsome showed a lot of nerves, and Winsome
he's a rookie, to be fair. You have to remember that, everyone. He is a total rookie.
Remember that this is the first time that there have been crowds in the LCS in 2 years. Winsome's never played in front of a crowd.
Of course not.
And he has had an up and down season overall. He has had some very good games. He's also had some pretty atrocious games. This game was not good. Like the bailout was not really present on Renata. Like I guess, maybe you could make an argument for them using the bailout on some of the engages that they had in order to try and snowball these fights. But I don't think that would have changed the outcome. But
like I said, mate, in
general, frankly,
aside from like, who can I think? Obviously, it goes without saying LCK and LPL have some good players. I think maybe I saw some good games from like Hillisang on Renata,
yes.
maybe.
Yes,
mate, I've seen very few Western players who seem like in the official games, they know how to use that champ. I get the vibe that it works in scrims, but it's just not working in the games. Because I see games where people don't even ult, it looks like, dude. Like, why are we picking this champion then?
Yeah.
Just forget to ult in a fight. Like, what? That's the whole point of this champion, boys.
And it's just,
it's a good concept,
It's also, I think, difficult because when Summit is grabbing this Renekton, like you have to play around the top side early into the game. Otherwise, you're just completely fucking useless. And when Summit is just randomly dying to Ornn, like you set yourself so far behind in terms of scaling that even really the Zeri can't save you. And there's also the Nautilus, which has been, the classic Zeri counterpick since the champion was released at this point in time, because you just ult her and then she can't do shit. So I think if you want to take the Zeri, maybe you try and get rid of the Nautilus, especially if you're on the blue side, and force them into perhaps a more difficult situation in terms of locking down the Zeri. But the Zeri really, never had a way to actually shoot in this game either. It's just kind of a disaster. And it's also worth noting that LCS is being played on patch 12.6, where Tryndamere has been nerfed, and I don't think the nerfs are super severe, but it is objectively a worse version of Tryndamere than it was before. And again, we find Summit, who is really just dedicated.
You're not a Tryndamere play. Get the fuck off that champion right now. You don't even play champions, and you're playing that. That's really hard to play. How dare you? How dare you, sir? Exactly.
I wonder, like,
that's a bloody finesse champion. Why is this guy playing it? This guy's a fucking caveman compared to that.
The thing is, he's seeing it as a pick into the Ornn, where it's like you could play Aatrox into the Ornn. That's certainly an opportunity that you could have if Summit wants to play kind of a lane dominant champion into an Ornn matchup, but playing the Tryndamere, I think, carried with it a lot of risk. And it's not only that, but it's the way that the team played around the Tryndamere, because it wasn't necessarily that Summit was doing super badly on the Tryndamere. It's that they were playing a flash ghost Tryndamere. So they did not have TP on the top side. And if you are actually looking at the way that Cloud9 is playing this game, Summit is in the top side. He cannot TP. Someday has TP. It's 14.5 minutes, so he can TP to the wave. What Cloud9 does is at 14 minutes, 30 seconds into this game, they come into the bot side and they attempt a tower dive when Someday has TP and Summit doesn't have one. And what ends up happening is they try and dive. Summit obviously can't join the fight because he's on the other side of the map. Someday TPs to the wave behind the dive, and they completely fuck up Cloud9. And it's like, that is just a macro mistake that has nothing to do with Summit. His teammates know he doesn't have TP. His teammates know he can't get there. Summit should be telling them, Someday has TP. I don't see Someday. He could be coming to you right now. And they make a play. Like, you have to look at the game clock and say, can we do this? They were desperate, obviously down 0-2 in this series, but it's not like they're making intelligent decisions about how to play these matches or even play around Summit, right? Like, Blabber also was not backing up Summit in the top lane. Like, you can criticize Summit for dying to that gank, which is fair. He should not have died to that gank in the first game, but also doesn't Blabber share a level of responsibility for not being in the lane at that time? Like, there's clearly a communication breakdown, or even just a I don't give a fuck anymore breakdown from the players. But there's a lot of focus on Max Waldo. There's a lot of focus on Summit, but the rest of the team was also playing like shit, guys. Like, they were doing inexplicable macro things that should not be made.
And also, I agree, certain players, Winston's the obvious one, definitely had nerves. They definitely weren't as good as they were in the regular split with no pressure.
Yeah.
You know, you could just see it.
You know, I was talking to Papa Smithy after the series, and he was saying, like, 100 Thieves is a team that does very well on stage. Like, they get fed by the energy of being on stage, and they're a much more veteran team. They certainly looked a lot better, I can tell you that. It seems like they... You know, if you look at their early part of the split, like Abadage was very clearly underperforming. You know, you look at FBI and Huhi were arguably underperforming as well, and Someday and Closer were kind of carrying this team. And now it looks like all the players are doing a good job. Yeah. And so, you know, this might be the first time in 100 Thieves history where Someday and the rest of the team are playing well at the same time, which means that they could possibly win the title, right? Like, that's not outrageous.
Here's the part people haven't thought about. Because Abedage really didn't turn up for most of the split, and historically, as you say, when they used to have the old lineups, so that was when Someday was good, but actually when they became champions was like his slump period. I don't think people have thought about the fact that as of right now, well, we've just seen them win this series against Cloud9, and now they're no joke. They're allowing a contender for best roster in the playoffs. Like, their roster looked fucking sick. Like, not only did they go man to man against Cloud9, but they can go against Team Liquid as well for sure. Look at it. Like,
especially with how TL
every lane, you can go lane by lane. As long as, and by the way, Björksen didn't look that sick this split anyway. So, like, I think this is a mega doable upper bracket final, mate. This could be a great game.
Yeah, could be a great game. I think that a lot of people will probably favor 100 Thieves at this point in time, even though a lot of that has to do with Cloud9's kind of epic meltdown that was more or less inexplicable, and 100 Thieves having a very good read on this, and you know, having a player in Someday who's been just extremely stable, and I would say has better late game map awareness than we've seen from Whippo. He doesn't usually just randomly die. Like, in terms of he has a very good sense this year for when he's being collapsed on and when plays can be made, and so he's very reliable in a way that Whippo and Summit can be kind of flippy. And we've seen that repeatedly throughout Team Liquid. Now you just have to hope you hit heads as opposed to tails 3 times, even if you hit tails 2 times in a best of 5. So, Whippo can still make the big plays even if he ints a game away, right? But I think it's an exciting matchup, and I think that I'm very glad that if Cloud9 had to collapse, at least 100 Thieves is going the other direction at the exact right times in terms of playoffs. But it is super disappointing to see what happened to Cloud9, especially what happened to Summit in this series. And I think there's a very real possibility that Cloud9 loses to Golden Guardians. I would say it's probably still 60-40 Cloud9 just based on raw talent, but Golden Guardians is not this is not a terrible matchup for them because at least they have Licorice. You know, it's not like some of the other worse NA top laners that they have. Like, if Licorice puts together a good series, Ablaze Olive has certainly been
This team isn't
pretty
as bad
good.
as people make out. I know their standings result wasn't so crazy, but let's look at this team and how well players have played. Blaze Olive, you can argue he's as good as Fudge as a mid laner. Why wouldn't he be? I've seen him have some fucking big pop-offs this split. Then you've got fucking Ole, actually one of the better supports this split. And then if you want to even throw one in there,
probably the second best support, frankly.
Considering I think Jungle's actually a pretty whack role in NA. Price Stalker's no fucking joke. He seemed okay. Right. He had some pretty good. In fact, I would say he was one of the better players in most of their wins. So, there's some pieces here for sure. They can go head to head. I would obviously favour Cloud9. I would imagine somebody has a better fucking performance. People get back in their shit. They adapt a little bit with the picks. But the difference is, before playoffs, this should be an easy 3-0. I think Golden Guardians wins games here. This could be an interesting series.
I mean, it also just depends on whether Summit just wants out of this roster.
Sure.
Straight up. If Summit is just done, there's a world. By the way, guys, there's a world where Fudge goes back to Cloud9 and they get Niski back next split. That's like
top lane. You said Cloud9, but I know you mean top lane.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Fudge goes back to the top lane and Niski comes back to Cloud9.
I should at least think about it. Better mind how it used to work. Yeah.
That's like a real possibility at this juncture. Remember, they still have Sven on the bench too. So if they wanted to get unfortunately they don't have Vulcan anymore, but it did seem like the Sven Vulcan synergy was not too great by the end there. But they could bring up the academy support. Like they do have options in terms of how they can run this roster. Now maybe you don't get rid of Berserker because Berserker's performing extremely well, but Sven is a big known quantity. And he's a hard worker, and he contributes a lot to comms within the game. So there is a world where we go like Niski, Sven, Fudge top lane for the summer split. And I bet you there's probably some suitors for Summit in Korea, having watched the LCK playoffs. Like if Noguri doesn't come back, maybe Gen.G, maybe Damwon, maybe they want Summit at this point in time, because those were pretty big holes, I think, in those rosters as we watch through the playoffs.
It's hole still, even though it was the case the last few years. For some reason, elite Korean teams just typically have the weakest player in the top lane. It's bizarre, isn't it? I know. The amount of them has been so crazy at this point. It's also the region that produces carry tops, and people don't know. It's like the best fucking position from the region ever. It's mad, isn't it?
So yeah, I think there is a possibility that Summit could potentially field offers from very, very good Korean teams that potentially would be more attractive than staying within Cloud9. Also, Jensen's there. Maybe Jensen makes a glorious return to Cloud9. I don't know.
Listen, if you want to gamble,
it's not unreasonable.
That's a fucking way right there, mate. You could walk in the door tomorrow and be the best player in his position. Who else could do that?
I think it's unlikely that Cloud9 would pick Jensen over Niski, given the choices and the identity of the team.
History and all that shit, there's reasons why as well.
But maybe Jensen wants to play enough that it'd be water under the bridge.
Be cool. I think it'd be cool.
He'd be joining a pretty good lineup as well. For sure. So yeah, I do think this is a big issue for Cloud9. There's a very real possibility that they completely suck against Golden Guardians. There's a non-zero chance that they go 0-3.
Yeah. I don't think it's impossible.
If they are just so mentally done and broken that they are unable to play League of Legends, that could definitely happen. I think the mentality within the team must be truly awful right now for both this draft to occur as well as the level of play that we saw within these games.
By the way, since you mentioned Vulcan, I was watching mutual friend of ours, Double Lift, where he was doing one of those videos where he pretends he's an analyst and a thinker and can speak. And what he was doing was he was reviewing a bunch of the all LCS votes, kind of like me. He's just like me, isn't he? We're the same, me and Double Lift. So when he was reviewing them, Monty, he came across Peter Dunn's votes, and he wasn't a big fan because he thought a lot of them were a bit silly, because you have to understand, Peter Dunn's one of those people where, I mean, funnily enough, Mac's coming on later. Maybe he'll have a comment on it. Peter Dunn's more like in the vein of like what Kelsey does, for example, where they'll always have a player that to you doesn't make sense why they're voted so highly. So the classic European example of this, by the way, was always Cadril as a jungler. Now, if you just watch him and you don't know him, you're going to go like, he's an okay player, but like, why are you hyping him? They hype him because there's something specific that they have a hard time coaching players to do that player can do. So, for example, in Cadril's case, he always had amazing comms and he always understood the macro of what was going to happen, and he could help you fix a lane. in and know when to do the backs. Now, you have to understand, to a coach, this is like the most god-tier shit ever, right? But to a normal person, you're just like, yeah, but there's more to jungle than that. And sometimes that player doesn't have it, right? So that's why, anyway, Peter Dunne was doing this. So rather, as you might do if you were smart, go, I wonder why Peter Dunne thinks that. Because he's double-lift Peter. Funny enough, Peter Dunn's should be fucking double-lift's analyst name. That should be his alter ego, mate, not fucking Peter Dunne. I don't know why you all call him that. He's actually a fucking genius at this game. So when double-lift attempts to analyse, of course, right, he just like, so he actually says something mad like, well, if you do these picks, then how can I respect you while think you watch the game? That's what I want to just point out, because when Doublelift was pointing out how he thought the support picks were ridiculous from Peter Dunne, he reeled off, Monty, a bunch of names that he could have had instead of those picks. And in the names he mentioned, he said Vulcan. So that's right, Doublelift. You can't understand, and you're putting this on camera on the internet, you can't understand why Peter Dunne, coach of Evil Geniuses, didn't pick Evil Geniuses' starting support player over the player he picked. You know what, Doublelift? I can relate to you. I know what it's like seeing someone's opinion and thinking, I've lost some of my respect for that person. Anyway, that's the end of that section. That's the Peter Dunne's Doublelift section. On to the next topic then. Just thought I'd update everyone on that one. Like to just keep it nice and fresh.
Imagine if coaches could and players could vote for their own players.
A nightmare, wouldn't it? I know, it'd be a nightmare.
Imagine what it would say if your coach like didn't put you in that list. You'd like tilt your entire team into oblivion. It's like, my coach thinks I'm garbage.
Yeah, but that's the thing, where you would get some like true legend, like, you know, like Greg Popovich type motherfucker who, like, just as a message would just not put anyone in, you know, or put like his best player like third team.
Suck.
Yeah, just to send a message like, you know, we're gonna level up, guys. You know, keep going, gotta keep pushing on this one. What did you think, by the way? Because you know that's a factor people keep forgetting about. We are, in theory, like 2+ years into all this bullshit with the fucking online games online, or do we get to have a crowd, do we not? Like, I do think people haven't factored that in. It's like the last few years, once we get everyone back to having all stage games, there's going to be massive asterisks on that. Because the problem is, if you were a rookie in that era, you actually got to sort of skate by and you never got truly tested. Like, we know this in CSGO. The difference between an event with a crowd and the same event just without a crowd there is night and day. That is the actual biggest difference of any variable I've found thus far in play. So I actually don't think, when we were talking about the Winston angle, that isn't a minor detail. So no. He's not only a rookie in his first playoffs where he's a massive favourite, but he's in front of a whole crowd. Like, people don't realise that alone could change the game right there.
Being on stage is different enough in and of itself. And many of these players were playing online matches. I mean, we saw the same thing with Mursa and Zlatan too. Who
sure, yeah.
There wasn't a crowd. Here's the thing. There wasn't even a crowd in LEC yet. So, I mean, mercifully, we don't have to watch them anymore, because I think if the crowd was there, it probably would have been even worse. This is another reason why I don't really want Evil Geniuses to like go to the finals, because I think
they're just filled with rookies. Yeah, exactly. And
I think going from nothing to stadium is not great for many of these people. So maybe you don't want to see that overall. But when you look at this situation, yeah, I think people don't realize how much of a difference it is even to have a few hundred people in there, because it changes the way you play games unless you're absolutely totally comfortable with it. And many of the veteran players have played almost every single game in their entire professional history, at least in front of a small crowd, right? So they're used to that level of support. Some people get very nervous and won't make plays that they would normally make because they're not playing aggressively enough. Some people get too hyped up and play overly aggressive, and many of these teams have sports psychologists attached to them, but you have to have a sample size to work with in order to address the emotions or play that the player is having. And I think in a player that has been inconsistent like Winsome, it can sometimes bring out the worst.
Also, I'm just going to say this because I always like to make this update, right? So you know how I always said, if you were going to be called tactical, you better not ever fucking in, because think of the name, you idiot. You've set yourself up for that. It's a tactical in, isn't it? You've done it yourself. Like, you have actually made it. So it's the same thing with the name Winsome. You're just begging for people to say you're inconsistent and you win some and you lose some. You fucking did that with your own name. Think about it. You're literally setting up the memes against yourself. Guys, just name yourself something neutral. If you name yourself something neutral, there's no obvious meme. But sadly, they always keep just fucking dangling that sword of Damocles memes above themselves, because he does win some lose. And that's the one area I always thought was mega overrated anyway, though. It's like, This is the part I'm a bit confused about, dude, is why were people so high on Cloud9 in the first place, mate? Like, to me, they always looked like a team where it's like these couple of players are just individually stomping, and that's it. Like, they were never a very, like, super cohesion and, like, amazing, oh, look at all the different ways they can play. Like, they were always actually a somewhat limited team.
I think that Summit was playing well enough that he looked like he was going to be able to hard carry, and the assumption was that he would be able to do this across multiple different champions. I think Fudge did a good job of playing a more supportive mid lane style and being able to play a lot of different champions in order to round out their compositions. Berserker also had some pop-off games, and so did Blabber. So if anything, I think you look at their roster compared to last year, and you see kind of more individual prowess or carry potential. You know, Perks wasn't amazing last year. He was clutch in some playoff situations, but he was kind of unsteady overall. And there wasn't, I think, the same level of pure individual ability. So that's what people were riding on. But I really just think this is a team cohesion issue, and that things have kind of gone downhill since LS, was removed from the coaching position. And I think it's very difficult to overcome a mental blow for a team like that when everybody signed up for this one thing and it's immediately gone. Do you care anymore as a player? Like, it's no longer what you signed up for. This isn't the experience you signed up for, especially Fudge, who is role swapping and seems to have a very large degree of faith in LS. I think it's probably been most tough on him. And I don't know what the relationship between LS and Summit was, but again, I don't think Summit is buying into having a head coach who's several years younger than him. And if LS was indeed one of the reasons why he decided to come to NA, not having him there is probably very frustrating.
I also think that this is the part I have to wonder about is, would LS have even got through to Summit, Monty? I don't know, because when I look at this guy play, I just think to myself, mate, if you're going to play such a limited champion pool, how does Fudge even get the benefit out of what he did with his role swap? Presumably the whole point of him role swapping was he was going to be totally open to different champion picks made in different comps, and you could go all these unique ways, and you could, like LS said, you could first time things on stage. You can't do any of that shit if you've only got 3 picks in the top lane. Like, you can have a slightly different mid lane in that comp, but it's still going to be a Renekton comp. It's still going to be a fucking Narcot. Like, you can't get away from that. Like, that's the problem. Essentially, these two players without LS don't make any sense in the same team. You know what I mean? Like, if Fudge was just a top laner, again, like you said, then no problem. He was a good top laner. If we have a normal mid laner, fine, we can play normal. To me, this is a team that was designed expressly not to play orthodox, but now it does just play quite a limited style of orthodox play, actually. It's just like, this is actually the worst of all worlds.
It's and almost, very, very low amounts of cohesion too. And like I said, just making really desperate looking macro mistakes that don't take into account the champions or the summoner spells that are even on the Rift. And don't seem to know how to play out to specific win conditions. And that could also just be a language barrier within the team. Like, Summit and Berserker and Winsome do not speak great English. So not having somebody within the game who can actively communicate, you can basically have two halves of the team, and that makes it really difficult.
And the other thing to me as well is this. Even before these Koreans got here, Blabber was an up and down player when it came to playoffs anyway, it was like rolling the die. You never knew if he was going to be on that game and carry it, or if you just kind of, you'd have an underwhelming game, be a bit invisible. So it's like, if he can't totally communicate as well with these players, and by the way, there's no universe in which people like Summit have ever played with a player like Blabber. Like, there's that Koreans. I mean, the joke is the closest Korean to that is fucking Malrang, and he's been exported already, hasn't he? We've brought him over to Europe. So, like, to me, there's just so many problems in this team. I don't see how you fix it. Like, I'd still think there's obviously a world. Like, let's be real. There is a world where this all just gets reset. They go in the low bracket, they stomp Golden Guardians, you play AG, very winnable series, you win that, you're back in the mix, But it will have to be, like, for me, a fundamental turnaround. It can't be anything comparable to this. Because I'm with you, actually. If I actually had to pick, if there was like an option, right, which is more likely? Did they like misread on the meta? It's different patch. They were in the wrong scrim bubble, whatever. Is it that, like, you keep going down the list that they don't have that? No, if I had to pick, actually, by the way, dude, it looked like people won out. Like the way that series went was just like, right, fuck the third game, let's go next. You know, one of those things. Like, the fuck?
That series was a cry for help, Duncan. That series was a cry for help. It was terrible. It was like a desperate scream of rage. I mean, it was bad.
Here's the analogy: if you were a man and this was your partner, and you said, "Everything okay?" If they said, "Like, yeah, it's fine." Spoiler, it isn't fine. Don't leave the room. Don't go and play a video game. Don't think you can come back tomorrow. If you don't fix it in the next hour, shit's over, mate. You don't. The fact that it's fine is just a test as to whether you think it's fine. That's all you need to know right there. That's the analogy right now. If someone was like, "It's fine, I'm just going to my room to watch anime," it's like, I would not let him go to his room if I were you. I would have a big conversation, emergency intervention, everything. Because we've got to pull this guy out wherever funk he's in. Because that's the dumbest thing as well. As much as I agree, it certainly wasn't only him. If he just even literally was half as bad, well, at least you win some games now. You know, these are big playable. The problem he had was he was chain feeding, so like the game's just over.
Yeah.
You know, by the way, that's something that I don't know if it's the meta at the moment, but that's something I noticed actually across all regions the last few weeks, though, Monty. As much as you can obviously be massively ahead if you play through top well, dude, there's some top laners now that are greedy as fuck. Like obvious what I'm thinking of already is like Alfari and fucking Vitality. Mate, some of these guys are like playing old school style where you just feed the lane when you die a couple of times. Like, what the fuck? How did they forget the 5 years of League of Legends where the lesson goes when you are down 0-2, you play differently and mitigate your losses? Like, people just fucking feed the lane now. It's fucking mental. Like, I don't know if it's the current meta, but I've seen a lot of like really abusive fucking top lane play, mate. Feels like people are just getting fed.
I think there are a lot of issues with Vitality, and they may also be Boom in a similar way that Cloud9.
Similar vibe, right? Yeah.
It's Boom.
Because look at these rosters, you think, you trip over and win a game, wouldn't you? You just accidentally get a nice pick comes through one time. But it doesn't matter with these squads, because, someone's just fucked in the head. Have we got anything else for this segment? Do we bring Mac on?
Let's talk about TL versus EG real quick, because a lot of people are going to be excited about...
By the way, did you plan to talk to Mac about LCK talks? I never actually prepped him on that. Did he say he watched it?
Yes.
Oh, quick. No problem. Yeah, go on
then. If he hasn't watched it, I told him we were going to talk about it. If he hasn't watched it, we'll talk about it.
That's okay. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah.
Got a lot to say about that one, too. But I think to briefly go through the EG series, like, yes,
this had no business being as close as it was, and no business at all.
Correct. I think you saw it's the weaknesses of EG that we've seen previously, including Jojo Pian sometimes being pretty suspect in team fights in terms of his positioning or his decisions that he's making, even if he is very strong in the laning phase overall. I think it's some of the same issues that we've seen with Team Liquid from being caught out. Also, some of these games were very heavily decided like at level 1 in the game. So I think that if some of these level 1s don't actually occur, then this ends up being a more favorable series overall for Team Liquid. I don't know what was going on with the Nidalee pick in the final game. Yes, Nidalee is slightly buffed on the patch that
your tweet was good, though, I can't lie. Because here's the thing. I'll give a slight spoiler now towards, obviously, the fucking final. Well, it was the semi-finals, actually. But if anyone remembers the reason why Damwon wasn't in the final, it's like Inspired watched that and went, that's not how you play Nidalee. Give it here. And then he just did a worse version of it. Like, did you not see Inspired? That you are permanently on a fucking tightrope when you play that champion. Like, if it goes wrong, it goes really wrong, mate. Like, in game 5, that's what I don't get, Monty. Like, when Canyon did that, my assumption was he thinks I am just the greatest jungler ever, so I'm going to make this work. I don't know what Inspired's thinking, mate. Like, you're not even a game 5 player, motherfucker. As far as I can tell from watching Rogue, you are the choke. The choke was you. As soon as you got on a play and fucked off, they're just fine now, mate. So, like, mate. Oh, when I even saw him lock that in, I was like, I can't believe this is going to work. It's not going to work.
There's so many issues with this, right?
Come on.
One of them is just Inspired as a player who is a farm first jungler. You have to do things in the early game with Nidalee And even if you do, you see, again, we talked about this when that semifinal occurred between Gen.G and Damwon, that this is the ultimate warning sign to never do these kind of compositions ever. Because if you can't win making a mistake or two from that position,
and they were up massively in the Gen.G
too
game.
risky. Because you don't want to force yourself. The upside is a win, right? But you have to play a flawless game, whereas the downside is enormous. So it's not worth the risk. It simply is not worth the risk. And for them to, in their second rotation after the second rounds of bans, for them to pull up the Nidalee Renekton combo, which by the way is a classic, right? This is a multi-year League of Legends classic. If you're a newer fan, you haven't seen it. The reason you do this is because you can play aggressively in lane. The Renekton stun sets up the Nidalee spear. Then Nidalee can close the gap, and it's a very effective top jungle kill synergy. The problem is that they blinded this, and then the Scion gets picked. And what is the threat in the late game from either of these champions into a Scion? Like,
do you think it should have been like Trundle or something? What else could he have picked here? What would you say?
Let me look at the actual bans that were,
because the bans were like Volibear was banned, Lee Sin, Jarvan. So what else is there? Trundle,
Jin Zhao. I mean,
Jin Zhao, of course, yeah.
There's the answer is basically anything. Like the Nidalee just isn't going to do what you want it to do. Especially like you are looking at the composition they're running and you see Bjergsen on the Veigar pick. Well, even if you land a spear, if the cage goes up, you can't get in. So there's very little value there. At spear range, Viego's going to be invisible, so it might be hard to hit him. And then there's a Tahm Kench. So even if you hit somebody with a spear, they just get eaten by the Tahm Kench and there's no follow-up. So I just think there were so many levels of problems.
Nidalee comp.
So many levels of problems with this composition that I find it, there's also jinx traps that you have to get past. Like, I don't know how you even use Nidalee in this composition. And again, this could be something that Inspired really wanted to do. It could be a similar situation to what we experienced with Summit in that other best of 5, where if the player wants to do it, you can fuck up your team by not letting the player do it.
I could also see a world where, as you said, because it famously is the jungle fucking top pick. This is the one where, it's not like Impact is like Summit-esque in this, but it's not impossible. Your top laner might ask for this if he's going to pick the Renekton,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, they may want to play it. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Let me just look at.
I'm sure they've won a load of scrims playing this combo.
Yeah, I'm just gonna see how many Nidalee games Inspired has played in his career, because I'm actually curious, because I don't recall.
And also,
7.
If anyone's never seen a Nidalee where you're behind in a game, spoiler, not fun. Really not fun. Like, it's just watching someone going, nah, I don't want to die now. I'm going to pull back. Nah, maybe not now. Nah, maybe not right now. Or just dying over and over against either of those two.
Oh, it's just playing these front-to-back team fights is just really unpleasant if you're playing into a Tahm Kench and a Scion as well. So having Bwipo have the Scion available to him, it makes it super hard. And I think that it was a great pick in this circumstance. Impact did get some kills in this game, but it was difficult to imagine what a win from this composition was going to look like. And it certainly wasn't worth the risk associated with it. And to me, if we're being honest about this series, like, EG had some really bold, like, level 1s that they were able to play and like win off of. To me,
it was sick. That's how you should play when you're an underdog.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
Yeah.
They knew they were an underdog in this series. It was obvious from the way they were playing. They did not want to play straight up games. They wanted to hide their picks. They wanted to play Graves jungle. They wanted to move Jojo Pyun into the top lane on the Lucian and impact into the mid lane on Ryze. They were playing shell games. They had, pre-planned level 1s. And that's not the fault. Like, that's not to diss them. Like, I think the EG coaching staff
was great, yeah.
did a really good job of saying, okay, if we fight these guys in a straight up scaling game, the odds are not in our favor. So what can we do?
No business. This series shouldn't even have been 5 games. Like, they just found a bunch of angles.
That it was 5 games.
They made it if you don't know, this is what you actually call matching your team up against someone. You find an angle where it sort of evens some of the odds or takes away an advantage for them.
Yeah. And game 4, I think, was really clever by EG. And so people will focus on the Nidalee Renekton pick and tunnel on that and be like, what the fuck was EG doing? But the fact that they even got to that game 5 was a minor miracle, I think, in and of itself, and was a result of some really savvy plays. Because if you're EG, you have to look at your advantages. Okay, we've got this great laner who may not be great in a 5v5 team fight, right?
Gotta get in the head.
Yeah, we've got a really solid top laner. We have an AD carry who like occasionally pops off. We've got a good roaming support player. We've got basically a farming jungler. So in essence, what you want to do is allow Impact to be the rock of the team, to be the stable split pusher. You want Jojo Pyun, I mean, he gets picked off sometimes because he doesn't have the best macro sense yet about how far he can push things before the enemy team collapses on him. But ideally, I think if you're EG, you don't want him in a 5v5 because that's actually worse for you. And so what do? Well, they put him on Ryze so he can have these kind of plays. They put him on the Lucian so he can kind of play by himself. They put him on the Akali so he can kind of play by himself. To me, this is kind of the ideal scenario of how to play this game if you're EG. Is it the best way to play in the meta? No. Is it a good way to play if you need to figure out things to do in order to win games in 5v5s that you shouldn't necessarily be favored in? Yes. I mean, they played side lane pick comps. They tried to play the Nocturne. They tried to play the Ryze.
They even flexed the Ryze, so they obviously tricked him in the draft potentially, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So overall, I think this was actually a very
great
good
job
showing by EG and especially the EG coaching staff to maximize the strengths of this team in a matchup where they were not favored to win. I think it's better to do that than try and play standard and hope you get lucky.
Oh, great. And you have to remember, guys, they will have played a million scrims against TL, and I'm sure they know in this case, like, our laners will be outmatched, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly. They know that. So they're not stupid. They're not just going to go into the game and play slightly inferior League of Legends.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, I think EG still has growing to do, which is to be expected with especially a rookie mid laner, which has to be necessarily by virtue of the position, the anchor of the team within League of Legends. And for them to trust him this much and for them to try and slowly develop him and play around his style, I think is really good. And I think the EG coaching staff is good, even if the Renekton Nidalee was not the world's best idea. I think they had
only problem though.
I think they had run out of ideas.
Here's my only problem though. The region, LCS. Your prospective superstar mid laner, main problem, can't team fight.
He might be able to in time.
Do I need to say anything? Do it? Guys, it's fucking it's NARAM. You have to be able to team fight. So all I'm saying, Jojo, is get in that fucking team fight simulator, mate. You better be the shit by summer comes.
I think he just needs more experience.
He needs more reps, of course, yeah.
I think that is, for the amount of time he's played League of Legends, which is hardly any time at all, and basically all of his experience has been in solo queue. This is his first time really getting coaching in this game. I don't know if he was coached in Fortnite. I don't think he was. I think that absolutely he needs more time. He is good for the amount of time that he's put in the game. He's very good. But I guess you just have to have the long view. All right. Now we can get Mac on.
Yes, do it.
But first, remember, this segment has been sponsored by esportsbet.io. Thank you very much. And if you guys want to, go to the website. If you sign up, you don't even have to spend crypto. They actually just give you DJ tokens for free, which you can just have fun with on the site. There's tons of prop bets you can make. You can hoard a mass of DJ tokens. Last year, they did a contest on the site just with DJ tokens where you could win real money for the World Championship. So lots of fun stuff to do there. You also get
there'll be a link in the description
deposit,
and all that jazz.
Yep. Yeah. 50% deposit bonus up to $200. So thank you very much to our sponsor. And now we're to get Mac on the show.
We're back for the next segment. This one with a guest presented by me, the one speaking and presenting. So the guest is Mac, head coach of Mad Lions, 2-time LEC champion, 2 appearances at Worlds. One of them we don't talk about, but whatever.
3.
We talked about the other one, though. The other one was good. till the playoffs, and even then you did get the fucking hardest team, to be fair. If people don't know, yes, okay. We're a bit like Cloud9. We're a bit scuffed too. Individually, we're really good, but it's not always the team cohesion. So yes, we have inadvertently booked Mac for 2 different shows, even though there was only the 2 of us and all we had to do was coordinate. But we haven't done that. So it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Listen.
You truly are the Cloud9 of teamwork.
Exactly.
I did wonder about that.
But we're going to play around it. That's the thing. Unlike Cloud9, we're not just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, ignoring the results. We're actually going to adapt mid-series, as it were. So what we'll do is this. The good news is the show that Mac appeared on was my LEC show with Dom, best damn league show, period. And if you know that show, that is very much like sort of a day-to-day show of that week of LEC, and then the next week's the next. So basically, when he came on, it was like a preview for the weekend's games in LEC, like the amazing Rogue versus Fnatic game and the matches that G2 played. So basically, we don't have to talk about much about what we talked about then because that was all just the preview. Now we can talk about those matches and look forward. So should we just start with the upper bracket, gentlemen, which obviously ended up being a fantastic series, really did deliver, by the way, it could have been a final. Look, it was a pretty interesting set of games. So people didn't watch it. The quick summary would be like this. Because everyone was going into the series with the mindset, basically, like first condition was, will Rogue choke? The fact that Fnatic won the first 2 games, I actually think seemed as though to some people it was playing into that storyline. But I have to say, I actually already was parting with most people because when I watched those first 2 games, those are really back and forth games. Like Rogue's actually coming back into these games. They're like actually individually even sort of going toe to toe with some of the Fnatic players. Then the next 3 games when people think, right, well, if the 2-0'd them, they're going to just 3-0, right? The next 3 games are really bizarre because if anything, Fnatic choked. Fnatic did the Rogue. They just looked like shit in a bunch of these games. Rogue actually looked amazing in some of them. We were just hard stopping the early. And by the end of the series, bizarrely, there was a whole dynamic flip and Rogue comes out looking amazing. So, Mac, what were your thoughts on this series? I know you had Fnatic as the winner overall when we were doing the preview, but understandably, almost everyone I know did, to be fair. Most people were a bit reticent to pick Rogue, obviously. What did you think of this series? Start wherever you like.
This series was mind-boggling to me. This series was like literally like it started off like I had some suspicions in game 1 as well, right? But like I was going through my checklist, like humanoid stomping Larson in lane in first 2 games, check. Like some suspicious like awkward TP plays from Larson, check. Rogue drafting control mages and no engage and full scaling comps and getting completely blasted in draft, check. Like I was going through the checklist, you know, and I was feeling pretty good about my predictions up until that point. There were some really weird red flags though, like even game 1. They had like 24 minutes all, right? I think Fnatic played the game like super well, like really fucking well
with
until
Corky,
like
so it's like fucking GG's.
yeah, like and they played it so well. They had a way better draft. They played like perfectly around package timings. They played the poke comp super well. They were on every objective first. Rogue got poked out. Rogue never got to contest like any of the dragons.
Proper fight. They were always like 2 people half health from the fucking just a Jace shock blast, pretty much, right?
Yeah, exactly. They played it like perfectly. And then they get the soul, and then they get the Baron, and then it begins. And it begins with Hylissang split pushing on Pike. With like him going bot as one man when the wave is in like fucking Narnia on his side of the base, like under his T2 almost, while the whole team is sieging like the enemy top end hip, and the enemy team are like, what the fuck is this guy doing here? Like, and so they just kill him, and then they base, and then they're 5v4 on the top side, and Fnatic's like, alright, well, I guess we don't get to use our Baron. And like honestly, every play after that looked like that. Not just from Hylissang, bear in mind, but they looked so insanely out of sync. Like, and that was honestly the story for like from that moment on. Even like game 2, I think like I can't remember the specifics of game 2, but it was like again similar story. I felt like they played way better. I felt like they, I think, had a better draft if I remember correctly.
Most people said the first couple of drafts were Fnatic favoured, you know, like
yeah,
Rogue, if you remember, Rogue was more picking towards like their picks as opposed to like against Fnatic, it felt like, you know.
I think
it was Rogue doing the like classic Rogue playoff drafts where they start off playing like these like weird long range control mage comps with like no engage, and then like they actually like pivoted. But like in the past, I remember like in 2020, Rogue like got like they did this in the first round of playoffs and got completely murdered by Fnatic when like no one knew that Evelyn was a champion, and then it took them like a week to recalibrate and come back and be like, okay, we can play carry junglers too, we can play Evelyn, etc., we can play Lucian mid, stuff like this. And I thought that this was happening, and I was like, wait, what? Like I was having flashbacks. And yeah, then Fnatic, I mean, to me, it just looked like they like tilted off the face of the earth. I was so confused.
I think for me, when I was watching this first game, I actually, even though Rogue lost, I had a high degree of faith that Rogue was still going to win this series because, as you say, it was really good early dragon stacking by Fnatic. It shouldn't have happened that way. Hylissang played the Pyke, got some picks, which allowed them to create pressure in the bot lane.
Mega early, yeah. Mega.
I mean, I think you pick that Lulu to try and actually contest the bot lane more. And when you end up giving up some early deaths, it doesn't actually end up working that way. But the fact that Rogue survived 15 minutes with an Infernal Soul against Jace Corki is ridiculous. Like that shouldn't happen. And it requires a lot of mistakes from Fnatic, and also required Rogue to really play their composition as well as they could. I agree. I think it's limited. I think the Lulu is not good. I would much rather have seen some level of engaged supports on this team. I guess I was a bit surprised that Rogue was the one who banned the Nautilus in game 1, considering that Hylissang has completely thrown games on Nautilus before, and it seems somewhat valuable.
He knows to throw this series, Monty. He can throw many games on many champions. He showed that in this.
Like the game 1 draft was so weird. Even like I remember looking at it and being like, okay, so they're gonna blind pick Lulu. They first of all they pick both their solo lanes early on. They just pick Victor Gnar like 2-3. Obviously, like enemy team has already shown Jace, right? So that's one. But at that point, you're being like, okay, Hylissang, counter pick me. Like, give it to me.
Yeah.
And then they ban neither Rakan nor Pyke, like 0 support bans, blind pick Lulu. And I was just like, huh?
Well, they banned Nautilus, which Hylissang has not even been good on. So
yeah, like, oh yeah, they did ban the Nautilus. My bad. But like banning neither of his like R5 champions that are like you like. I mean, you must know this is coming. And then I saw him get like 3 kills in the early game, and I was like,
yes,
yeah, who could have seen this coming?
So I do think that they came in with a pretty bad game plan, and then it was funny to me because they're like, okay, guys. One more thing to say, though, run it back.
Here's why, though, Monty. Here's also why game 1, even though I agree, for the first like 15, 20 minutes, Fnatic's doing great. They get way ahead thanks to Hylissang and the shit in bot lane and all the chances they're taking. Mate, not only did they survive against all the dragons, like you said, but there's that moment where if fucking Humanoid either gets critted or gets 1 more damage, that fight is won and they're right back in that game. Like when he escaped on that Corki at that fucking Herald was fucking mental, mate. Like that was just pure fluke. That's just, you roll the dice, you get away with one of them one time. And he had a couple of those in the first 2 games, actually, where he was like just dodging on like no health whatsoever. So everything looked like it was going Fnatic's way. I was thinking the same thing. Let's just play it back again. Let's have another game.
I think Rogue had bad tools, but they were using the tools that they had well.
By the way, here's a great example. One of the main discussion points for the whole split's been the impact of Malrang upon this team. This is how you know it's just the pure style impact that has it. Because some of his fucking builds and setups in this game were like, what? But here's the thing, though. I don't know why he does those, but he still can fucking pilot the champions. So he's still, even in these games, he was creating like chances to have a fight or to get a pick or get a hit on someone. Like he was doing what he could do, Like that's what I want to ask you, actually, Mac, is it must be hard as a coach to watch that. Because on the one hand, isn't it like some of his players look like the basketball player where the guy takes the ill-advised shot and you go, no. Yep. Well done when it goes in, because you have to sort of say, well, I can't say it's bad now it went in, didn't it? I feel like half of his players are like this dude. Like he just goes for the genius play or it's going to be shit.
Yeah. I mean, I think you like you kind of accept that your fates are intertwined with this person's psychopathy at that point when you hire them. Like assuming you know who they are when you hire them. You just you're like.
That's why I can't coach again,
he is just jungle Hylissang, dude. That's all Malrang is. He is jungle Hylissang. He's just trying to make players all the time.
All the time. And I mean, he made the flank onto Humanoid that got him down to like 1 HP, right? Like if he has like however much less HP or there's a red buff on the AD carry or whatever it is, right? I think Rogue actually just straight up wins the game there.
I think Malrang was fucking insane in some of these fights in terms of his ability to flank and like actually create the possibility of a comeback. He was brilliant.
I mean that comp, like you're playing Lee Sin with 0 easy CCs in your comp. Like you're playing with Gnar, Victor, Jinx, and Lulu. So you have like a long range comp with no frontline and Lee Sin, who's like not exactly a tanky frontline jungler, like he's a flanking jungler, so you're like the one-man army flanking on your own against these like insane poke champions. There's a Xayah, there's a Pyke, like it's so easy for them to actually find you and kite you, and he managed to find the flank, right? So honestly, like huge props to him.
I think
there's 2 parts though as to why though. One, like this is where narratives are always interesting, because when a narrative goes the other way, there's an alternative counter narrative. So there's two that we have to talk about here. One is Larssen, because here's what's great, Mac, is the series was really going, like, if you ever watch Larssen play, it's like, oh, he's doing it again, right? He's just invisible on the map. He's even playing his champions, brother. He's a fucking amazing Victor player. That ain't the Victor I was watching during the split. He was like never in the bloody fight, or he got blown up instantly and mispositioned, right? So then you come to game 3. Here's where you knew, though, Mac. It's either this is like going to be the most terrible draft ever, or this isn't the same Larssen. Because, mate, who the fuck would ever predict this? I'd love to get a spot bet on what the odds are. He fucking locks in Silas in game 3 and then just does it all the games. Like, mate, that was a Chad move right there. Like, that was actually like, he just realised, like, you have to shit or get off the pot. Like, right, may as well fucking go all in. And I tell you what, it fucking looked good in the game. Actually, he did turn his style around. Shows how the tools you give yourself change how you will play and make decisions.
Yeah, I mean, props to him. Like, I don't want to take away from Rogue, and maybe I'm a bit biased towards Humanoid because he's an ex-player, right? And like, I have a style bias towards players. I like explosive players, right? But I
must have hated him the last 3 games, then.
I don't want to be like.
Oh no, sorry, he did get exploded. My bad. Yeah, he was a very explosive player.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Right, okay.
That's part of the intertwined fates. Roll the dice. True. Like, you accept your fate at that point. You accept your fate.
Okay.
Like when I see some of those games, I'm like, that's my old mid laner. That's my boy. But to go back to Larssen, I don't want to be too quick to rewrite the narrative, because I mean, some of these games are like honestly pretty disgusting. Like, I think the game 3, I think Hecarim has like 4 kills at 7 minutes, and you're like, okay, yep, that's a scrim. That's Scrimmerim.
It was 4. It was game 4, I think.
Was that game 4? Yeah. I mean, like, some of the games are just so awful. Like, game 3 is the one where so they do the like top dive, which doesn't work out because Odo has tenacity and dodges it by like 0.5 seconds, and like, so up until that point, Larssen has been getting shafted in lane. To be fair, you're supposed to get shafted in lane, but he's like 20 CS down at like 6 minutes. Like, Humanoid's giving him like the treatment, right? And like, Fnatic's been playing super well through mid up until that point. He goes for the base. He does this like TP into ulti play on top, which actually in hindsight, I'm not sure was necessary with the wave timing. I think he was in range with TF ulti without the TP. But when you do that play, like, he sacrifices like a shit ton. And like, by the end of that play, Silas is then like even on CS. It's literally like a 20 CS gap, or maybe like 14 if the wave was in a weird position when he based, like if there's 6 extra CS for Larssen when he based. It's literally like a 20 CS deficit play, but like, Jace should be like super out of the game if he dies there, because Sion's going to get like, he's going to lose like 2.5 waves. Sion's going to get like probably 2 plates. I don't know if Sion has Demolish, but he normally takes it. So like, it's going to be like a huge loss. That goes to shit because Odo manages to flash it. And then immediately afterwards, you think you have like Hylissang and Razork walk into the river, and this then becomes like the template for the rest of this series, where like half of the team is doing something else, and then 1 or 2 members of the team are just like just doing something that's like super aggressive and makes no sense whatsoever. Like in this example, Humanoid's in base. Larssen is out of base first, and he's on mid lane first. Jinx has a stacked wave coming into her on the tower. She's catching like 10 CS. And they're just starting Herald, and they both die to Hecarim, and you're like, okay, great, cool. like at that point, honestly, like, Rogue, realistically, what they did, like, it's ballsy to give TF, right? Like, giving Humanoid TF is like, I wouldn't have done it, to be honest.
It's also in the last best of 1 they played in the regular season. They gave Humanoid TF and he shit on them.
Yeah,
so like, I think, and you have to remember that Rogue chose red side with the intention, very specifically, of giving him TF.
And also that like, they dropped the Silas, right? Like, they dropped Silas to second round. Like, they could have just banned Silas, and then it's a completely different draft. Yep. But realistically, what they did, like picking Silas Hecarim, you're basically being like, you're kind of just taking a dick for the early game and being like, we're going to lose the early game. Our top laner might be out of the game, but if our top laner is not out of the game in 10 minutes, we're going to outscale you and we're going to win because we're going to out team fight you.
Well, and by the way, I just looked, and Malrong was like up 4-0, 5-0 in both game 3 and game 4.
Yeah.
So he had both games that he was absolutely shitting on them.
It's like Max said, those games, game 3 and game 4, are the reason why people like Pokes were making those comments about scrims. Like, that's exactly the type of match I'm envisioning he was picking when he was saying, like, there's no way Fnatic wins LEC if they play the way they do in scrims. Like, I'm assuming this is what happens. Like, you know, they just get snowballed on sometimes, and they're like, fuck it, go next or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I mean, these games looked like, it's so weird, like, analyzing the games. Like, they literally all look over at like 10 minutes because Rogue basically just picked like a comp that outscales and then stomped in the early game. You're like, well, okay. And from that point, Fnatic, like, they fell apart. There were so many weird things. Even like in one of the Thresh games, there's like this super telegraphed like 4-man dive. Fnatic has just shown like 2 people bot, I think, or 1 person bot, an upset in Hylissang, like under the top tower, like full map darkness, entire enemy team coming into them. Like Upset walks away from the tower first. Hylissang is standing under it with Thresh instead of playing Lantern. Like they just don't move, and then Upset flashes out, and Hylissang dies under the tower. When like if their position's reversed, they could probably be fine, or at least they should be giving up if they're not fine. You know, like they just look so disjointed.
Also, here's the other narrative I wanted to bring up. Everyone loves it when Hylissang makes genius plays and he pulls shit off like early game in those, like game one especially. Here's the problem though. There's a downside to Hylissang, which you saw in the rest of the series, which is he might be the guy who's just side lane, pushing a lane, way pushed up and just get picked off for no reason. That is also a part of his game. He's always trying to make something happen. But the problem was when they were mega behind, you just feed at that point, unfortunately. And he got caught a few times, mate.
Yeah, a few times. I mean, same for Humanoid, right? Like they.
Oh, both of them.
They did a really good job of
it's like they were trying to make a play. I can see what they were trying to do, but it's like it was going to be very hard to make anything happen in these games. Like you say, these were two games that technically, if this was a scrim, you would go next. You wouldn't keep playing it out at that point.
Yeah, if Hecarim has 4 kills at 6 minutes, you're like, okay.
You just say, fuck it, next match. Exactly. We're not playing like 30
Hecarim always gets fed in scrims. Hecarim literally always gets fed in scrims. I don't know why. Like, it's just impossible to play against this champion in scrims. But I mean, like, on the other side, like, yeah, they're trying to make plays. They're trying to make stuff happen. In the, like, game 3-1, where Odo Omne gets away with, like, 0.2 seconds left flashing out, like, if that goes slightly differently, if they're a bit more patient with the execution, like, even if they just like back off and don't do the dive and just take a plate and whatever, like it's pretty bad for him. If he does die and loses all of that, like he's really doomed. He's really doomed in the game. And after that, he's going to be food for the rest of the game. Like he's literally dead on like every TF ulti after that. But then obviously like Hecarim comes, cleans up, gets 2 kills, then goes to Herald, gets 2 more kills, and then like the game's unplayable. So it doesn't matter like what state Jace's lane is in anymore. Like it literally doesn't matter. Fair point to make as well though. Shout out to Odo. Odo had a really, really, really insane series.
Sure.
I think he got the better out of.
He was even good in the games they lost. It's just the team didn't play
yeah.
around him. Oh, he just, like you say, he just got fucking porked off immediately. There's nothing to do with that. They even had one fight, I remember, dude, where they like fought like 1 second before his ult came up, like, which is the nightmare when it's an R player. Like, give me a break, guys, please. 1 second.
Yeah. I mean, I think Odo's laning is really, really, really top tier.
Sure.
And I think that was really shown. Like Wunder, like you got to respect the pedigree and the experience, and I think his creativity and his flexibility as a player.
Sure.
But Odo really had his number in lane. Like in game 3, like before the point that like all of this has already happened with the top dive, he's already like killed Wunder once in the 1v1. Like Wunder's actually 0-1 by this point, just because he had like really good wave control. And the way that like at least I can tell that I feel like Odo had a way better series than Wunder is that in the matchup where he has wave control and he has agency, the wave is frozen in front of his tower, Wunder gets killed by jungle gank. And then in the matchup where like the next game they have Aatrox into Ornn, and Ornn goes bot level 1 to counter the Braum level 1 invade, which was like pretty smart, right? Odo basically like FFs his lane, like completely FFs his lane at level 1, gets his team a kill, Hecarim gets the kill at level 1, haha. And then he TP's top. And at that
He's
point,
in a bad
like,
matchup for Ornn. That is
like Ornn versus Aatrox. Like I'm not going to say that the matchup is like that the game is like over for top lane, but like it's rough. It's really rough. And the thing is that Aatrox has like full control of the wave. Like Aatrox can always decide where that wave is supposed to be. And somehow at level 6, he dies to a Hecarim gank. Somehow at level 6, when Odo is fresh from base with like a bramble vest, and I think Wunder is there in lane with like a longsword and a ruby crystal, like he's down a base basically. The wave is like frozen in front of Odo's tower, and he just gets Ornn ulted and dies to Hecarim. And it's like, okay, now Hecarim has 2 kills. Great. At level like 6 minutes again. And that's like a really, really big tell that like in the matchup where he's supposed to win, he still gets ganked at the exact same point as he did in the matchup where he's actually supposed to be losing. Well, not the same point, but in the exact same way.
I do love the adaptation, though, because that's one of those things that you can do with Ornn that is kind of unique to the champion, because you can always just build your items in lanes. So losing early TP is not as big of a deal as long as you're not getting like completely chunked out within the laning phase. And so it's just another variable that I think you have to account for when it comes to level 1 plays, and more teams should think about that.
Yeah, for sure.
By the way, there was while we're talking about Odo, I wanted to ask about this clip where, this is one thing that's very unusual is, right after this match, he just went and was streaming. And when he was streaming, he essentially sort of flamed Larson and fucking Malrang, his jungler and main, because he essentially described how in game 3 of the series, if people remember, there's that fight he has on the top side where it was when he was Jace, and they get dove by the Fnatic players. And it's obvious, as he says, that he's going to be dove. Like, the waves are literally building up, they're going to dive on that wave. And he does the classic top laner move, move where it's like, guys, they can come in like 2 minutes. Guys, they're probably going to come in. Guys, the waves are stacking. They're going to come now. And here's the problem, right? This is why I love this clip, because it's just, if you've ever played top lane, you understand the clip. And if you ever haven't played top lane, you also understand why they didn't come, which is he's totally right. Everything he's saying is totally correct about what's going to happen. But you just know that the jungler's like, I've got to clear this Gramp. And then the mid lane's like, there's another wave still to go. Like, we all know the way these people are, because everyone
has transferring blue.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were blue side, so it was like the far side away from top lane. It was bottom of the map. Like, it is really funny though to watch him just like
but here's the thing though, he did also make a point that was interesting, which I want to ask about, which was the key thing to me is this, like I set it up there, Mac, if I only look from the outside, it's like, oh wow, Larson really, whatever team talk they had after game 2, he really got his shit together. It's like, actually this implies, because this was game 3, this implies Larson probably wouldn't have gone for this counter play and gone in on the fight and gambled, but essentially in a mixture of guilt and having Malrang sort of just magnetically drew him into the fight, which, spoiler, they were able to sort of make an interesting war of attrition and start turning the game a bit. So, and I think this is why I bring it up. To me, this is why actually I had confidence in this rogue versus the rogues in the past, Mac. It's because everyone keeps talking like they talk as though we don't have some like drastically different jungler in the team. Like just the way Malrang plays alone, it reminds me of those stories of when Caps left Fnatic and people were like, but why would that be a big deal though? Like, he wasn't like some big shot caller. It's like, no, but the way he plays it almost compels you to follow up on his plays, to follow him around if you're the jungler. Like, to me, Malrang, that's the difference I've seen in Rogue. It's like the way his mentality is so different to Inspired's. And to me, it's like he gives you a chance in these games. He sets you up to get back into a match. What have you thought of this?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, like you said it earlier, right? Like it's literally jungle Hylissang, and that's exactly how you play with Hylissang, right? You accept that you are on the train and you are going towards a brick wall, and either you're going to smash through the brick wall with Hylissang in front of you, or you're all going to die, like splatted onto this brick wall. And realistically, like jokes aside, that's just what good roster building looks like, right? Like Malrang and Larson are a really good pairing together. Like massive respect for like all of the changes that Rogue have made. I think they've been super, super intelligent about their roster building over the last 2 years, because Malrang and Larson is like that's the type of pairing where like no one was hyping up Malrang as like an insane player, and a lot of people were pretty down on Larson. But like together they make like a complete picture, It's yin and yang. They're like Malrang brings Larson into situations where he's forced to just rely on his mechanics, and Larson's really good mechanically, but they're decisions that he wouldn't make otherwise. And Malrang has someone who will follow him, right? Like you have a leader and a follower paired together, and that's really, really valuable. So props to them.
I also think that Odo clip, if we combine the universe of Odo Omne knowledge that we have on this show, because he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that he said was that he was very grateful because before he and Larson had to play around Inspired all the time, and like I think we can infer based on this clip, for reasons I'll get to, that was frustrating for him. And when we asked him, when I was talking to him about some of Malrang's like very unorthodox pathing, including like sometimes just running all the way across map to go to enemy Krugs, and then he's just like behind the turret and then he dies with Odo Omne. Odo was loving that shit. He was like, basically Odo Omne was saying, go back and watch it if you want. But Malrang makes plays to help me proactively. So he's just there sometimes to help me out, even when I'm not calling for it, because his read on pressure on the map is very good. And so that's why it's funny that he's complaining about it, because his opinion on the show was that this happens, he gets a lot more help these days, but you can see the level of frustration he has when he's not getting help, when he's relaying this information, which I'm just going to go ahead and make the leap to probably didn't like playing with Inspired very much compared to Malrang, because like he's complaining about this guy who helps him all the fucking time and plays around him, and we know that that's true, and then he is being very critical about this one play where Malrang isn't doing that. It is funny, and they do play it well. He does get there eventually, even though Odo Omne dies. But the point is like, I think this mentality that Rogue has right now, and just from talking to people, you can tell that the overall mental within the team is significantly better than it was with Inspired. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to mount a reverse sweep, like, period. I don't think old Rogue could have done this. I think that this is a really, really good indication of the difference in comfort within the team, or the way that the organization works within the game, like within their comms, within their trust in each other. They feel like they enjoy playing the game more in this style. And I think that comes through much, much better mental resilience than they've had in the past period.
By the way, you also saw like most of the responses to this clip, by the way, are just people like, "Oh my god, is it that bad inside the team? Wow, what's he doing, flaming him?" Like, listen, Americans, calm the fuck down and take a chill pill for a second. Like, you have to understand that is just a top European team. And that is, by the way, a mega veteran player who's, remember, played weak side top lane his whole fucking career in elite teams. I'd be pretty frustrated at this point. You know what? It's a bit like me. If you ever go back, this actually happened on our show that me and Richard do. Me and Richard have like a talk show we do in CSGO, right? That initially we began just for a sponsor. And so you can watch the first one back in like 2015 or something, right? And everyone kept saying in the comments, like, wow, you all seem like a lot more soft-spoken and a lot like light-hearted. It's like, yeah, we hadn't had like 7 years of esports jading the fuck out of us and people calling us a liar every day. So imagine you're Erdogan there, you've played about 1 million fucking bad matchups, you played every Jace game where the second you didn't get the first kill, they fucked off out your lane, and then the fan looks at the box score like, he had Jason to that should smash the lane. Like, you put up with that your whole career. Morons telling you that it's you that chokes all the games, not like all the other players that never won anything. You make it all the way through, and then finally, yeah, you know what, you want to bitch a little bit, you've got a good team, but this guy didn't play right. And also, here's the other thing they don't get. If you know the players in that team, they aren't going to be bothered by that. Like, actually, their team, like Monty says, they actually seem like they can handle that sort of disagreement in that regard. You know, like, I don't think Larson's going to give a flying fuck about that.
He was also streaming. It was also for entertainment. It was fucking funny.
It was great.
Yeah, it was really funny.
But that's Odo's brand, right? Odo's brand is kind of grumpy old man.
Yeah.
Exactly. I will tell you straight up, like, I worked with him on Splice in 2018, and like exactly what he said on stream there, he will say that like in a review after scrims, and then like he will give you this monologue, and at the end he will smile at you and be like, huh. Like, that's just what he's like, right? And as Thorin said, like, that's what like the inside of teams are often like, and like, I mean, that's Odo's personality, like, and he's hilarious for it, but I don't think it's like a huge deal, and yeah, it's for sure entertainment value as well.
If you are the weak side taking a dick 24/7 for 10 years, you're allowed to complain every now and then. There's my rule. Fucking new rule. Maybe you're allowed to just slightly complain as you then take the dick for another 15 minutes in the game so the mid laner can get all his picks. Yeah, you know what, mid laners? That's top laners' prerogative. I'm just saying that right now. I've known a lot of them, small as fucking Odoam there. You're allowed to moan a little bit, okay? That's part of the role. That's part of the role.
It's also, even if that doesn't go well for Rogue in that particular play, they're still fine, guys. Like, they still have a huge advantage from that early game. I think they're still very favored to win that game. Odo could literally do nothing that game, and I still think they win that. It's lucky that, you know, they did manage to turn it around. But you do understand when you're, down 0-2 in a series, and your mid laner's like transferring blue buff, and you're giving very high notice that this Scion's going to dive you in top lane, that it might just be frustrating that that's going on.
When you're playing Jace as well, right? Like, to be clear here, to anyone who isn't like 100% clear on this that's listening, like, they are supposed to be playing around him. It's not like, it's not supposed to be optional here. Like, it's Jace versus Scion.
Well, I mean, yes, I think they're in a blank slate game, I agree with you. I think with how things were going that game, did it really matter?
Oh, this was before the snowball. This is the play that started the snowball, because this is when they ulted on top of him, and like, Jace actually does die, and Hecarim comes and cleans up 2 kills, and then Fnatic ints on the Herald, and Hecarim gets another 2 kills. We're in an even game at this point.
That's fair enough. That is fair enough. That was like, when he used the. I mean, what was funny about that play too is Fnatic uses the TP to go to top lane, and like when he was describing it, he was saying Larson said he couldn't be there because he was back, but Larson should know that he has TP. So
I think he's actually in range without the TP. I actually like looked at the play earlier.
He was in base.
No, yeah, I think he's close. I think he's close enough, because like the wave that they end up going on, like, they actually go on the dive before the wave even crashes into the tower, like way before. And Scion can slow down the wave if he wants. I think Humanoid can even be in range without TPing there. Like, it's way slower, and it's obviously more telegraphed, and jungler's more likely to be there, but I'm pretty sure he can be in range.
Maybe. I'm watching it right now.
Yeah. And this isn't a game where, like, it would be close. It would be close. I'm not 100%, but this is a game where, like, Jace Jace already killed the Scion and is, like, I think 10 or something CS up. Like, he's murdering him. Like, you need to play around this guy's lane. You shouldn't be playing topside.
That's fair.
And then
You should
also,
not be letting him get dove, that's for sure.
in the same way as Larson swapping up and going Silas all the last 3 games changed how he played because of the toolkit he had. The one that people missed because they were looking at the Silas angle and all these kills from Malran, they missed the Trimby swap. Trimby went from playing Lulu every game to Rakan every game. And as you saw, mate, the Rakan Trimby is the one I've been going on and on about all this split. Like, mate, this guy's a fucking beast. Like, I told people, the one player, if you love Hylissang, everyone does. Most people think he's behind Vethio as the MVP. There's one player in this league right now who can handle fucking Hylissang, and it's called Trimby. You saw it in this game. This guy's the closest thing we've got at the moment. And you see when he's on the car, he's a playmaker. He is a playmaker.
We talked about it last week, and I was like, oh yeah, like I would like gamble on Hylissang to like deliver more in these clutch situations, and Trimby can probably reach him within a year because he's the only player that can like match Hylissang's champion pool right now. But like that seems to have happened earlier. Sidebar: my predictions are awful. Like, holy moly, everything went wrong.
I think it's interesting too because the level of faith they had in Trimby, because they were saving the Rakan picks in the 3 games they won until R5 in the draft. So like they were really, really prioritizing getting the right support matchup for him. And they saved on the blue side the Lulu until the end. That obviously I think was not the play in retrospect. But in 4 out of these 5 games, the team on red side picked support last, which is...
Holy shit, poor Odo. He blind picked Ornn on R4 with only Camille banned with TF up and a losing jungle matchup. Holy moly. And then he went bot level 1 to stop the invade and sacrificed his TP. This poor guy.
If you lose that game, the fan looks at the box score, doesn't he watch the game and goes, bloody Odo, I'm there choking again. What?
I mean, the poor guy was like, even after Wunder died, Odo was like 40 CS down in that lane, which like that's normal. That's normal for like Aatrox versus Ornn with no TP level 1. Like that's how the matchup's supposed to look.
Yeah, that is rough. Good.
And there's that great story of Odo coming out of the just passing Wunder in the bathroom and being like, "That's top lane life."
There's also a player on the Fnatic side I want to point out. Like, look, I did want to make sure, because sadly I know Fnatic fans, and Fnatic fans, they're like TSM fans. They're probably the worst fan base for just picking their usual scapegoat and beating the fuck out of him, even when he isn't the one who underplayed. So, like, I'll notice in this case, right, even though the main people I would say you should be giving some criticism to are fucking Humanoid and Hylissang, especially with the picks that fucking Humanoid had. As usual, I know all the abuse will just go to like fucking Wonder and Upset, as always. Like, they weren't even the reason this series was lost. Like, I'll tell you one name no one's mentioned so far. Where the fuck was Razork? I've told people this the whole split. This guy, like, he clearly is a good player. You can see he has mechanics. You can see he's a skilled player, but there's still something for me, Max. Something doesn't sync up with the other players on his team. Like, I've just seen too many games where he just gets sort of lost in the mix. I don't know what he's doing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's mechanically fucking insane. But like, there were so many instances of Fnatic being super split, and I think the main culprits were jungle support. Honestly, I think there's so many instances, especially when they're playing the Thresh games, where Upset and Hylissang are going side lane, like they're laning on top lane, for example, where Razork like shows and then Hylissang does something random on top side, or where, like I said, Upset's catching a wave and they're starting a Herald, or where like just really weird stuff like this, where they're just like not respecting like fundamentals of like, okay, my jungler was spotted bot, I need to be safe top, or vice versa, or whatever it is, right? I think those two were like pretty criminal in some cases in this series.
Did you see, Monty? It actually ended up that it was a race against the clock. Was it Razor Cake or was it Razork Ache? And it actually turned out it was Razork Ache for Fnatic fans. Not Razor Cake. Me and you had a delicious cake. True, it's not the finals, by the way. If anyone knows anything about KT Roll, so this is the true setup. The next Razor Cake is the sharpest, the most dangerous, deadly razors ever. That come out to look like forever. We can't taste ever again after that.
Yeah.
We'll see. You know, I'm gonna eat the fuck out of that cake in the final.
We had we already had, you know, the lick of the frosting,
yes,
as it were. In the first round versus Misfits, and then we took a tentative bite of the edge of the cake. But we don't know that there aren't razors in there. But it is delicious right now, especially their first sweep. I mean, this could be the greatest razor cake in League of Legends history. Like, the setup is real.
Because here's the other thing I actually think for real. Like, dude, this is how you know how narratives and the power of names, like star power value names, overwhelm people. Because I feel like it wasn't until Rogue won this series that a lot of people realized, wait a minute, actually, Rogue player for player is pretty much as good as any team in LEC. Like, they're as good as Fnatic. Remember, everyone calls Fnatic a super team. Dude, this Rogue team, man for man, is fucking incredible. I mean, part of it, I will say, is probably like we were talking about earlier, Mac. Like, it's the fact that, like, Malrang and Larson seem to, like, cover each other's weaknesses. It makes them both better, and suddenly they don't have a weakness. Like, there's some of that going on for sure. But, like, I think people have actually, because people were so sure they were going to choke and therefore it wouldn't matter, people have sort of underrated this Rogue roster, mate. I think it's, again, the coaching staff's done a fabulous job with the players they've picked.
There's three factors, right? One of which is nobody expected Malrang to be this good.
Of course, yes.
The second one is nobody expected the rest of the team to completely 180 jungle styles and be effective as a team. And the third one is Trimby was the worst player on the roster this year and is significantly improved. So they have three really big factors that are going for them that I think were unpredictable before the start of this year.
Yeah, and I think European teams have historically done an awful job of integrating Korean players. I think Rogue, by the look of it, has done a pretty decent job. Obviously, Malrang is a player that has been exported several times before, and that helps a lot because you can tell that, like, okay, he's done it, and like he's okay with doing it again. Like, it didn't fail horrendously last time he was exported. But Rogue also have like an additional Korean staff member now, right, or Korean-speaking staff member in Seal, who I think like. For sure, that's part of the purpose of bringing him on, right? Is to bring on another Korean speaker to make sure that you have someone inside the coaching staff that can manage your Korean player, and that's a transition that they also deserve a lot of credit for. For sure.
Absolutely.
By the way, you'll enjoy this, Thorin. Did you know that Seal is I think it's supposed to be CL because his initials are CL, but his name is actually Christopher Lee, which is
why?
So mental. It's kind of amazing. The fact that they haven't made content around his name being Christopher Lee yet is really just tragic. But
come on, Seal, you should know Freddy 122 doesn't share power. There you go. Freebie for you there. Just one top deck.
I think the funny thing about what you're saying about narrative before, right? About being like, Rogue's definitely gonna choke, like they're gonna choke in playoffs. Now that they've like done one reverse sweep, people are gonna be like,
opposite, yeah.
Rogue no longer chokes. It's science. It's a fact. Rogue is now immune to choking. The curse has been lifted. They will never choke again. Which is like obviously not how it works, right? Like people turn up and have bad days at the office. I think Fnatic had like the worst day at the office in the history of days at the office, frankly. Apart from arguably some previous Mad Lions days at the office, some of those were pretty bad. But
it's the difference, though, Mac. To me, I actually think that if the first two games played out identically, so Fnatic's like ahead early both times, like Rogue sort of gradually pulls close but then loses, like close games but you're down 0-2. If they did just lose game 3 and it was like embarrassing, I actually think that for real might have actually in their own minds like cemented that narrative of like, fuck, maybe we are chokers. But to me, the fact that they not only won but like survived the 2 hard games and then stopped the last 3, like if you ever wanted to completely transform the mentality of the remaining Rogue players from the past years, that's like the perfect series to do it, to make you think like, fuck, so we can hold up in games we're behind in, we can swap up to stuff we don't even pick, and then actually we're the clutch ones who stop like that. That's like just what the doctor ordered to me. Like this, because to me the difference was they could still lose the final. Maybe Fnatic's amazing in the final, outplays them. But I think the difference is if Rogue had lost here and they have to play in the final and overcome that part, that's different from if you win now and it's like they have to prove that you're a choker, as it were, the next time around. I think this actually could, the way this played out, I think was probably like the most like psychologically healing fucking affair you could probably have for the Rogue players to get past all the bloody trauma of all those past failures,
Absolutely. I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on Fnatic for sure to, as you said, like prove them wrong in a sense. I think it can make a huge difference to the way that your like self-talk, right? Your inner dialogue with yourself works, to no longer think that and to have this like clean break with the past of like, well, that's old Rogue and now we're a different Rogue and I'm a different person now and I'm a different player now and I don't do that anymore. And like in a way you can like placebo yourself into being immune to these types of feelings, because it's like, as I said, there's a separation now between what happened in the past and what happened now because there's been this clean break.
I want to know your perspective as a coach, and especially
we see Otto Am there every night now. Like he's trying to get to sleep, the phone starts ringing. Oh, who is it? Just sees the number, American number. He goes, "Listen, inspired. I'm not answering when you call. You never used to fucking answer when I called." Put that down. And he's just sleeping the sleep of the fucking saints, motherfucker. The first good night's sleep I've had in about 7 years. It's leaning into it. Like when you're 5 minutes before your alarm goes off, you've hit that snooze.
I'm sure inspired misses playing with Larson now.
Anyway, it's not the same anyway, as it was anyway, so don't worry about it.
I want to get your take as a coach and as somebody who has coached Humanoid previously, Mac. Because what was so interesting to me about this series is the psychology that starts to happen after game 3. So Rogue, right, pivots after picking blue side twice because they were the higher seed coming into this matchup, right? So they picked blue side at the beginning of the series. They lose a game. They pick blue side again. They lose a game. Then they switch to red side. And they have the Silas pick locked and loaded, not a pick that Larson is known for. They willingly give Humanoid the TF. And then for the next 2 games, Fnatic picks blue side and gets TF into the TF Silas matchup at each of those games. What is the psychology that you think is happening right now within Fnatic in order to kind of allow this scenario to play out 3 times in a row?
Like, put it this way, it wasn't really less salty run back. Please tell me it wasn't.
Okay, so the first one, I think you can very easily make sense of it, like from an internal perspective, by saying like, okay, we picked Diana. Diana didn't work out. We picked Sion. We picked a tank top with TF and a carry jungle, and we tried that format. That didn't work out. So now we're going to switch to carry top and like Viego, who's much better at like early ganking and early pressuring, right? So to me that makes sense, right? And I honestly I think that when I looked at Game 4 draft, I think that their draft was better. I straight up think their draft was actually a lot better. The only thing is that like Braum into Rakan is meh, but like that game should be way different because I think you have like hard pressure top, hard pressure mid, and you have a like way stronger early jungler. And if the level 1 invade goes off differently and Ornn doesn't randomly show up and get a 3-man knock up, like perfect pixel, and then Hecarim gets a free kill at level 1 and like rides away into the sunset inside his own jungle and farms into oblivion. Like if all of that like nonsense doesn't happen, if the game is played out standard, or if the level 1 invade works, or whatever it is, I think like Fnatic could easily stomp with this draft. I think their draft is way better, personally. Like obviously they get outscaled eventually, but it shouldn't even matter that much because actually Aatrox is really good into their champions. Like when you're playing against Ornn Hecarim as Aatrox, like even Silas to a certain extent, like you're gonna come out of laning phase with a big lead, and as soon as you do, like when you have your second item, like you literally don't care. You can run up side lane and 1v3 for like 20 minutes, and you have a TF in your pocket at all times. Like this game should be so easy to play for an Aatrox. So I think that draft was honestly really good. Game 5, at that point, you can argue that it looks a little bit stubborn. I think there's some stubbornness there. For me, I mean, something that I've experienced in the past is often like, if a player is like, I'm pretty sure that like Humanoid is convinced that the TF is a good pick, and I think it is like obviously a good pick, and it's obviously a good pick for him. The adaptation that you can argue for is I think that in the last game they banned Jarvan and Hecarim, which both make sense. Those are both good bans, no problem there. They banned Jace, which to me, if they're giving you TF every game, like I don't think you care that much about the Jace. He's kind of food for you with a lot of champions. Like even if they pick Jace and you pick TF Nara into it, like you can get a lot from that matchup. With a TF bearing down on him, and like they could have banned the Silas in first round, and then that makes Rogue in a really difficult position, right? Because
we'll never know what Larson was actually going to play.
Yeah,
right? They must have other answers, right? Like this
I guess because they dropped it in game 1. Although in game 1 they're probably, I mean, actually I don't think they did have other answers because I'll tell you why. Because in game 3, which is the first Silas game, they dropped to second round and Fnatic bans Victor Orianna, and Rogue is gambling there and saying like, okay, there's no way they ban Silas because they're going to think we're going to play a control mage or an Azir or a Corki or some random shit.
And then they up the priority into first rotation. And
exactly after that they first round it every time. So I actually don't think they had more answers. I think after the game 3 they were like, we are playing Silas into TF full stop. And I think if they had banned Silas, there's a good chance that Rogue would have banned TF. Last. But that means that they're then squeezed because you give either Zeri, LeBlanc, which you're not giving Zeri or LeBlanc to Fnatic, in my opinion, or you give them Volibear first pick, which looked really, really insane for Razork. That's the one champion that, like, aside from Viego, Razork has looked actually really, really insane on, and their early games have been really synced with, right? Like when Razork is on Volibear, he and Hylissang are like all over the map just killing people. Or they can trade, right? They can trade TF for Volibear, I suppose, in that situation, but they have no Silas. So you're getting like Volibear Orianna into TF, which I don't even know if that's winning.
I think you don't leave the Zeri or the LeBlanc up because those were the first 2 bans. The last ban on red side was either Viego or Volibear in the last 3 games of the series. So it would have been Volibear that would have been left.
Yeah, their last ban is Volibear. So if you ban Silas and they ban TF, then you're probably getting a first pick Volibear, and then you're probably favored in the draft realistically because I think that's a like super good draft strategy for them, especially with Jarvan and Hecarim banned out. Like at that point, Marong's going to go play probably Lee Sin, or like he could play Trundle, I suppose. Maybe they're worried about that. But I think the like banning Jace there instead of doing a Silas ban or instead of changing your draft a little bit, because they go back with like the exact same structure in game 3, and that to me looks a little bit stubborn.
I'll also say as well, like if you're talking about a game 5 playoff match, this is the first time the guy's ever played in LEC. Like having Malrang on Trundle's not the end of the world. Like that's not a terrible champion for this guy to have to play. Like I'd rather have him on something like that than so, like on the Lee Sin. At least he might be able to get some fucking angles off, mate. The problem was like it's another game where they just went down super early. They were just getting stomped, so it just didn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, it's always easy to critique the draft
exactly.
after the fact, but like the reality is that like the games, all of these games were pretty much over at 10 minutes because Rogue had like a way superior scaling teamfight comp and were massively ahead. So like, go figure, you know, like you can also argue it the other way, you know, like.
I also think that that's as good as Rogue looked in the losses that they had in terms of making the most out of a bad situation. You can easily see this matchup swinging the other way in Fnatic's favor. Again, go back to the last best of one they played, where Humanoid had the Twisted Fate at the end of the split, which was on a different patch, to be fair, but and completely stomped out Rogue. And this pick, I think it is justifiable that you don't expect all the early games to be going this badly and be fighting this uphill battle right from level 1 at times. And so there is a situation where there's a neutral game state in the first few minutes of the game where this spins out very differently. And it could spin out very differently in another series that I think these two teams are likely to play against each other.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like the TF, like if Rogue has done this, they're going to start leaving TF up against Fnatic in the future, and Fnatic is going to pick it. There's no way they're not.
That'll definitely be the next chess move to watch when they play again in the final, hopefully.
Yeah, hope so.
Do we want to talk about the G2 Misfits series, which was the other one that happened this week? Unfortunately, I feel like there's
first.
I feel like there's not a lot to say here, but
you've got to say something. It was like fucking perks, self-made Alfari. Like that's the problem on paper. It was wild, wasn't it? They were fucking trashing the game, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's worth saying is that I think right now it's really hard to make an argument for anyone other than Broken Blade being the best in LEC. I think like you can maybe say Odo Amnite. Actually, that's fair.
Yeah, they're the two.
Odo Amnite versus Broken Blade is going to be super interesting. But like when we came into like looking at the predictions, we like went like down and said like, oh, I think Alfari will be able to hold Broken Blade, no problem. He didn't. He absolutely didn't. Broken Blade was so good in that series. And obviously, like
Alfari looked a bit shocked, dude. He looked a bit mentally rattled because normally the thing I appreciate about him is like he should actually play properly when like people are ahead. Like he looked like he just Shane fed a bunch. That was depressing.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. I mean, I think Broken Blade was way better. I think one thing that we did kind of predict was that I think bot lane was going to be better for Vitality, and I think they were. I think Kazi Lavrov were like way better.
Yeah. Aside from Lavrov not knowing where fucking R is on Renata, but we'll ignore that for now, Lavrov. Whatever, mate. We'll forget about that one for now.
That was a thing. Then the two main things that I honestly saw for Vitality, and there's like a bigger discussion here, especially about like the whole scrim debate thing.
Yes.
Number one was like Perks making some really big blunders, execution blunders, like consistently big execution blunders, like on the Akali, for example, was rough. The second thing I saw was honestly like I think Vitality were favored in game 3 for sure. Like game 3 was theirs, and I think there might have been another game where they were okay in, but like good god, their dragon control, good god, it was awful. Like they just every time the enemies were in a position to get like third or fourth, or they were in a position to get third or fourth dragon, like they would get to like the mid wave and be like, okay guys, we're gonna contest. Nah. Or they would just not be there on time, or they would just be like randomly doing something else, pushing out a side lane somewhere. They're like, it was really rough to watch. It was really rough to watch. And then even in the fights, like there's a bunch of fight examples where they have like they win the fight around dragon. This is in the Akali game as well. They win the fight around dragon, and then they literally chase to the enemies like T2, and they just all die under the T2 instead of turning around and taking the dragon. And there were so many examples of this where they just chose not to play for an objective, or they just chose to like do random stuff. And like honestly, to me, that reeks of a team that just isn't well drilled. I mean, I know that they were saying that they were like doing super well in scrims and they were stomping in scrims, and what that sounds like to me is that they're literally just like smashing people into the floor in like 10 minutes and then the game's getting FF'd, and they're not creating like any positive practice habits whatsoever, because like they literally just look super I don't know what the opposite of a well-oiled machine is, like infer what you want, but they literally just look like they're not used to playing competitive League of Legends.
I think this team is uncoachable. That's what I think. And unless one of the players is, unless they pull a T1 where Faker just becomes the coach of the team and does a good job, which is, I think, hard to do, especially because at least on T1, you have this super veteran player in Faker who can kind of be the de facto leader role, whereas you have multiple very veteran players on this roster who might be kind of conflicting over who might be the de facto coach within this roster. But what's puzzling to me is that a lot of the criticism that we could have leveled against Vitality for most of the split was that their early game looked incredibly clueless, and they kind of came together, at least in late game team fights and the games that they were winning. And the only complete game that I feel like I've seen in the last few weeks was game 5 of their previous series up against Excel. And then now in this series, it looked like their early game was better, but their, as you say, their mid to late game objective control was horrific. And they were over pursuing frequently. So weirdly, I feel like they had a very different problem in the playoffs than they had, or in this series, I should say, than I felt that they had for a lot of the season.
Yeah, it was really strange to watch. Really strange to watch, especially because like that's kind of supposed to be we talked a lot about intangibles previously. That's kind of the area that Perks is supposed to deliver in
Yes.
to this team, you know? And my understanding as well from like talking to people is that like he's kind of like filling the coach position that like you mentioned, the same as like Faker does, right? I don't know how Perks does it, right? But like in theory, that's like his role on the team, because it's not like they have a big leadership figure from the coaching staff, which like can be fine, you know, if you have enough leadership figures in the game, and Perks is like supposed to be that. But it's
I mean,
really...
T1 fired their coaches, let Faker run the team last year, and it's worked out pretty fucking well.
Yeah, good for them. Good for them. And then yeah, like it's so weird that like that is your leadership figure, and that is the failure that we see both from him individually and from the team on like a macro sense, because that was always Perks' strength, right? That was always Perks' strength. Like
It's a very weird problem they're having.
And like he was always like the intelligent mid laner, and his teams were always the most intelligent teams. So like I think there has to be some like huge clash and like a huge lack of identity with how they actually want to play the game.
Yes.
I'll tell you an obvious problem. Their jungler and support are the opposite of what I would describe as intelligent jungler and supporters, mate. They're people with hands, that's it. Like, mate, self-made. What the fuck was he doing this year? Like, just redo the whole year, mate. It's over for you. Just forget about it. Go next split for you, mate. It's fucking atrocious. And I love the way, by the way, because he's not a fucking pop-off player anymore. Jankos just like is the sleeper OP every bloody year. Everyone tells me he's washed and, you know, the G2 have got to get rid of him now. And at the end of every bloody playoffs, he just remains like the fucking crypt keeper, like guarding the door to the championship for all these fucking up-and-coming players. Like, just spoiler, if you're Polish and you're a jungler, you've got way to go before you overtake Jankos, mate. There's loads of you, but every year he takes care of them all. It's fucking sick. I just love it. Because what I love is all the rest of them are like ego players. They're all trying to play the fucking pop-off, the Lee Sin, the Diana. They're all trying to get all the fucking kills. You'd never know what he does in the game because he does everything for his team, you idiots. If people don't know, Jankos is a player where every teammate you talk to of his is like, his comms are great. He's always in the right position. He can sacrifice for the team when he needs to, sacrifice in draft. Like, the guy's just the consummate professional jungler, and you see what you can do. Like, bear in mind, this is actually something of a scuffed G2 team. Like, they don't get the power levels are that great. But you have a player like that, he just fucking fills in holes around your team. I'd love to have that guy on my team, mate. One of my instant picks if I was a coach, of course.
Yep, intangibles.
Do you want to talk about G2 versus Misfits? Because I think we can do a very quick recap of this one too. Flacket had a very good series, which I think he really stepped up overall. I think Cap stepped up a little bit too. A lot of this was dominated by Jankos and Broken Blade being fabulous. Also, Misfits, we talked about it before. Mursa and Schlatan seem to have very big stage nerves. They performed significantly worse. Here it has been worse than last year overall.
He's
got his face kicked in by Broken Blade overall. And VTO, VTO did some very good things on Vex in game 1 to try and orchestrate a comeback, but that was really the closest they got to any kind of lead in this series. It was.
Yeah, they actually almost came back into that game.
Yes.
They were really close to coming back into that game, despite them getting like if you're realistically looking at that game as an expert viewer, and you look and you see like whatever it was, like 0-2 Vex, 0-2 Na versus Camille at like however many minutes it was, like Camille already super far ahead. It's rough. It's really rough from that point. It's really hard to win the game against that Camille. But they actually had some really nice team fights from behind. But yeah, I can't even remember what the final blunder was, but I think they like almost fought their way back into the game, and then they just had like one time where they all blundered and just died, and they just, 5 of them just died, and the game was over, which was super sad. I think the big story of the series in general was like G2 drafting for mid prio, and then Misfits lanes like not playing correctly against it. Like I think game 2 was when they played Jinx Tarm, and there's loads of examples of like I think jungler shows top to gank for Hear It, and Mercer and Neon like all in 5 seconds later on bot lane. When your jungler just showed, and you know the enemy jungler is bot side, you should know the enemy jungler is bot side. And so obviously they just die. And there's loads of stuff like that where every time someone, it feels like whenever someone got a free move into their lane, whether it was top or bot, they kind of just died. And then obviously like mid lane will get a counter move, and Vito would then like move top, deny some CS from Broken Blade, but not kill him, and then the bot lane would die again. So the snowball was like just 4 times bigger for G2 from what I saw.
Even though, as we pointed out, like when we were talking about LCS, for example, like, look, Summit can still be the MVP of the LCS even if he played shit in the playoffs. It's a regular season award, right? I don't want people to do that thing where they go, you said Vethio was the best. Where was it? Playoffs is different. But I actually think the playoffs show you how important Vethio was. Because when he wasn't hard carrying these games, mate, Misfits looks like such a fucking whack team. Like, they just had nothing against any of the teams they played against pretty much. Like, this just showed you this guy really was stomping these fucking regular season games. He was hard carrying the fuck, and nearly always, you remember on playmaking champions that you can do all sorts of shit in the fight. So what you saw was he still had a couple of games. He had 1 or 2 where he was good, but he wasn't at the same level. And for most of the games, he wasn't the same threat. And quite frankly, it even looked, this is one thing I worried about. It looked also like they didn't just cynically load everything into him and go, right, carry the whole series. Like they sort of tried to play real League of Legends, which I hate when you have a one-man team, you know.
Well, they had Neon too. I think the problem was that Mersa was just incredibly underwhelming in the playoffs as a whole. And so it put them in a scenario where they want to like do things like game 3 counterpick Tryndamere with Fiora.
Another rookie.
And that's the level of desperation they got to, was that they couldn't even rely on their bot lane anymore because of Mersa's performance. And so they have to try and like all in on a Fiora counterpick into Tryndamere, and with Hear It's performance, it's just not going to work. Like, where do you turn to at that point in time? It's just super rough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a horrible matchup for them. And I think, like, honestly, the adaptation they tried to make in game 1 is, like, the right kind of adaptation. The problem that they have is, like, Vito is your, like, main carry player of the game, right? The thing is that when they put him on main carry champions, like, when they put him on LeBlanc in game 2, it's not like you get, like, easy prio, you know? And, like, they first picked him LeBlanc, which is the right thing to do, I think, for sure, for them. But obviously, Caps is going to pick Lissandra, and then Caps is going to roam, and then if your bot lane dies a bunch of times when Lissandra's roaming, and enemy top lane doesn't die to the counter roam from you, then, well, sucks. Like, you're now behind in the game, and it's really, really hard to play LeBlanc versus Lissandra from significantly behind in the game, and Jack's kind of 1v9 that game. So it's kind of like doomed if you do, doomed if you don't, because on the other hand, they could put him on like a facilitator, which is what they tried to do in the Vex, right? I think G2 camped him early, which was really smart from them. But even then, like, if he... like, where is he roaming if he's playing Vex and winning in the mid 2v2? Because in game,
you have to have somebody to fucking help, dude.
Yeah, like I
if you look at the way that these like Korean and Chinese teams are playing Vex, it is a side lane enabler, or it's a follow-up engage within a team fight, right? Those are the 2 ways that you end up playing Vex. But you have to have other threats on the team.
Yeah. I mean, Broken Blade was playing Camille versus Na, which is supposed to be losing early, and like it's all hitting the Na, blowing the Na's flash, like had wave control. Like it's not fun to play like a facilitating mid laner in that position. And then like I think that's how honestly you end up with what happened in game 3, because the game 3 draft was like so weird. Like you just blind pick Silas because you have to go like red side and ban LeBlanc at that point, because it hasn't worked for you in either game. I mean, you could do the LeBlanc again, but like it didn't work out right. So they try to adapt. They just like blind pick their carry, their best champion. They hope he can carry on Silas, or like one of his best champions, right? That they're just hoping, like, you know, they see a Hecarim, they see a Renata, whose ulti I'm assuming is pretty good on Silas. So they're like, okay, we just pick Silas and we hope for the best. But I mean, they end up with like no priors in this game against like a Hecarim, and then I mean, the Fiora counter pick is supposed to work into Tryndamere. Like I've seen some Fiora counter picks into Tryndamere, and like honestly, the matchup is rough for Tryndamere. I think like level 1, 2, 3, it's like, I mean, this was at Worlds, right? So it's a different level of Fiora player. It was Ale actually playing it against us, and holy moly, that was not pleasant. But like it's awful. Like we looked through this matchup like a lot at Worlds and basically came to the conclusion of like, well, if you're Tryndamere and you're playing against a really good Fiora, you just cannot do anything. Like level 1, 2, 3, 4, like he has full wave control, you lose slow trades, you lose poke, you lose all in trades, like it's just a horrible matchup.
Luckily he wasn't playing against a really good Fiora though, so
it didn't look that horrible when
exactly.
they were playing it. So they ended up with just like losing everywhere on the map, like super hardcore losing lanes. Aphelios, Leona versus Hecarim, like they don't have like a Tahm Kench or anything like that, which is kind of weird that they didn't pick the Tahm Kench there. So your Aphelios is kind of like bait at that point, and you're just hoping that Silas 1v9s. But yeah, if your Fiora isn't winning
it's
against
funny that you
Tryndamere,
mentioned that matchup at Worlds with Ali's Fiora, because LNG played like absolute shit this last week in the LPL playoffs. Did you watch when they blind picked Fiora in the third game when they were down 0-2? Because
that's a classic.
That was really fucking hard to watch.
No, the worst part is that at Worlds we came to the conclusion that you actually just have to ban Fiora against this team and against a couple of other teams as well, because like we had multiple Chinese teams who would just blind pick Fiora against us, and I'll be like, so what are we playing against this? Like, and it didn't fucking matter. Like, at least especially with AO, like this guy's actually just too good on Fiora.
Well, he's fallen a long way. Let's put it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, yeah.
He was fucking terrible in this series.
There's another reason though why no one fears Misfits. Because you can literally just ban Lee Sin and Schlatten doesn't play League of Legends anymore. Go and have a look. Of the 13 games they have won, including playoffs, this split, 7 of his wins are on fucking Lee Sin. So all G2 does is cynically ban Lee Sin every game. It's not like Yanko's just going to lock it in first pick anyway. And that's it. It's just over. You don't have to worry about Schlatten now. Like, this is the problem with, I mean, I know people are going to go, is he a rookie? Like, rookies in that sense, like, he was too limited a player. Again, my problem is this, right? In a way, Mac, I actually find it a bit hard to criticise Misfits because obviously if I watch the game, I can criticise the fuck out of them. But essentially, they shouldn't be in this position. Like, they had no business being a 3 seed. Like, they did it because one guy had one of the hardest individual stomp fucking splits ever. And then, realistically, he's by the way, I do this thing where I don't care how many splits you've played. If you've played for like 1 year and you're as young as Vethius, you're a rookie still as far as I'm concerned. Like, how I use that term, you are a rookie, mate. You've barely fucking played League of Legends. So, like, thinking he wasn't going to do it in the playoffs. And then when the rest of the team also falls apart, all of a sudden Misfits is like, realistically, they're not that good a team. Like, it's basically the difference between them with VTO going ham and without is like when he doesn't, they're not even a playoff team, in my opinion. Like, I actually really do feel like if I was XL, I'd be like, dude, give me a crack at them. I might be able to beat them in a series, but we don't get to play because we were in the last place match.
Yeah, I mean, like they hugely overperformed in the regular season, and
yeah, some
to
props,
be fair,
you know.
I think Schlatten actually does deserve a lot of the credit for that, because I think a lot of the process of making sure, like their early games were like dumpster fires for a lot of the time, right? But realistically, watching them, like the only 2 players who are usually in the game are VTO and Schlatten, and those two, like they end up coming back in team fights, and like Neon had some great team fights here, had some great team fights, but like in terms of like actually playing the early game, being around mid at the correct times, making aggressive plays at the correct times, like Schlatten and VTO were both, I think, quite willing to make like aggressive plays at the correct times, even as very young players, rookies, whatever you want to call them, despite the whole map being like completely on fire, which I think takes a lot of composure and poise. And I think Zlatan was pretty solid for the most of the regular season. It might be that he was a lot better on Lee Sin. His Lee Sin's very good. I probably gave him Lee Sin twice in regular season. That sounds like something I would do. But I think he's pretty good on Xin Zhao as well, actually. And I think maybe Javan.
I think obviously the Lee Sin ban hurts, but for me it was the nerves. Just watching, these are players that don't have significantly stage experience coming into having even no audience stage experience, and compared to the regular season, there was a very notable dip in performance from both Zlatan and Mursa in the 2 series that we watched.
Yeah, which is completely to be expected. I mean, I think it's something that people don't necessarily realize as much, but like for example, when we brought Kazi and Humanoid into the team, like those guys had played on big stages for like their entire careers so far in the ERLs, because big stages existed in the ERLs back then. And then we went into COVID. Like this year, bringing Unforgiven and Rika into the team, neither of them had ever played a game on stage, ever. And like, I wouldn't be surprised if I mean, definitely Mercer. I'm pretty sure Mercer has never played a game on stage ever in his life before this year. Zlatan might have because he was
Maybe
in,
some
I
smaller
think,
LAN or something
Spain.
years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. But like, they've never had any experience like this, not even close. So obviously they're going to perform worse. Like,
Yes.
that's normal and that's expected. And I think given the circumstances, Misfits like way overperformed, and like they deserve credit for having a really good.
Yes.
Like you can't hate on them because they're third place when they're not supposed to be third place, right? Which is what you're saying.
It's why I say I don't want to hate on them too much, because essentially, like, they overperformed and put themselves in an even harder situation than they otherwise would have been. Like, if they'd have been the team that just snuck in on the last game to playoffs and then lost in that last match to Vitality, no one would care. It'd be fine. That'd be acceptable. No one would hate on them. The problem they had here was because they got the third seed, and then even then, like, it kind of said it all when you pick the third seed as number one. Like, it's already a bad sign already, boys, when we're picking the guy that has the fucking the better win. And then on top of that, like, it just put you in a whole bunch of series that you were never supposed to win. You were never supposed to win any of these series. It's totally expected you'd lose. It's fine.
Absolutely.
And I'll even say this. I actually think, as much as, like, for the split, you'd go, it's just a fucking VTO story. Like, if he doesn't play as well, it's not going to be as good. I'll go the other way on that, though. Hirit, surely he's going to get better in the summer. Surely. Like, he had a really bad split.
He was pretty good last year.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I don't know if he's going to be like a monster. I don't think he can be that bad. And if he is, by the way, it's just time to get rid of him, because the problem is he feeds too hard.
I mean, Misfits have good pieces for the future, right? Like Zlatan, Neon, and Mercer, and like Hirit like seems like a coin flip at the moment, right? But like, if you're looking to be like a team that develops talent, like, it's fine to have a coin flip player on your team. Like, if he comes up heads, great, you keep him. If not, then fine. Like, it doesn't work out, and you can always go with someone else in like following years, right? But like, I think in terms of the pieces they have on their team to develop, they have like for sure good pieces. I mean, they're almost undoubtedly going to lose VTO next year, right? Because his contract's coming up.
It's obvious, yes.
But like,
someone's going to offer him the king's ransom. It just feels obvious at this point, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, of course. But I think they have like for sure good pieces to develop.
Right. Obviously, we should look a little bit to a match we've already seen, G2 rematching with Fnatic. Thoughts? I mean, I know most people are just going to assume Fnatic wins, but I wanted to know, actually, is that the case now? I mean, we've seen G2 have a couple of nice series. They've sort of clawed their way back to some respectability, you know?
That's tough. I mean, it might be the case. I think it depends so much on draft. Like, I think we saw a lot, like, them giving Fnatic LeBlanc like either 2 or 3 times last time, and I think Rogue has shown now that you can ban LeBlanc and things look a bit different. 4 times? Wow, okay. That was brave. I think, like,
you know how
banning
many
LeBlanc
games were in that
makes a difference.
series?
4.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, I think that can make a big difference now that they've seen some like different stuff from Fnatic. I feel like weirdly enough, and it feels very odd to say this, I think Rogue is actually a lot more flexible than G2 in many ways. I think G2 is very one-dimensional in style, so they're much easier to prepare for on a BO5. I think they're 2 very easy BO5s. Whereas Fnatic, I think, like if you compare G2 to Rogue, for example, like Rogue can play the Caitlyn Lux spot. G2 is never going to play Caitlyn Lux spot. I mean, maybe they are. Maybe they've been prepping it right, but I don't think it's that likely. So I think prepping for them is way easier if you're Fnatic. Yeah, I don't think it's particularly changed my mind on it, because I think Fnatic had a much harder series, and I think G2 had 2 very easy series. So yeah, I don't think it will be a big deal, but like changing the drafts up will for sure make a big impact. Like, G2 has a lot more information on Fnatic now.
It's also worth noting that I found it interesting that G2 was banning Twisted Fate on blue side in the last series. So it's possible that in the couple of weeks between these 2 matches that will have taken place, that Caps is going to feel much more confident on blue side on a Twisted Fate. There's also the fact that I think Flackhead's performance was notably better in the series that he played against Misfits. And while Upset and Hylissang are obviously a very, significantly more difficult lane to play against, I think his individual level was a lot higher than when he played in the Fnatic series. So that could be another factor.
Here's what I need to see though, Monty. I need to see a game like early in that Rogue series where Hylissang gets like a fucking pike pick. Because what I love, dude, is he does all the obnoxious shit you're only supposed to do in solo queue at like level 1 and level 2. Like the plays he goes for are so ridiculous. And as a result though, like you can just tell these other players are like, there's no way he's going for this on stage. And he doesn't give a fuck. He really doesn't give a fuck. So like if you're sort of like a rookie like these guys are from G2, that can fucking rattle you if a series starts out that way. Like a game just begins with the guy just fucking styling on you, getting a kill, burning your flash, waste. Oh, that's the nightmare. Like this guy, basically, Hylissang is the guy who's going to make you tilt.
Absolutely. I mean, he takes up a lot of space, both in lane and on the map. Like he's the type of person that really like pushes his limits over what they're supposed to be and sees how you react, you know? And like in those situations, you need someone, like ideally a veteran, who's going to step forward and be like, no, you're over the line. I'm engaging on you and killing you.
Yes.
But you don't have that in laning with Targamas. I mean, maybe Targamas is like aggressive enough to do it, but I don't think G2's bot lane is like favored in that sense. I think it's interesting what you bring up about the TF, because what's really weird to me is that G2 is like, they left TF up, I think, every game against Misfits, which is like normal because Misfits doesn't play it.
I would not be worried about it versus Misfits, right? Like,
no, yeah, of course not.
You're really happy. You're really fucking happy if VTO picks TF because you're like, well, that guy's not going to carry down. Now he has to go enable people. Like, good luck.
Absolutely not. Yeah, but the weird thing is that they don't seem to have any intention to play it themselves. Now maybe they're just like hiding it because they don't need to play against Misfits and Caps will play. I mean, he's just so capable of playing it. But the fact that they banned it on blue side against Fnatic previously means only like one of two things. Either number one, they have something that is way higher priority on first pick to pick, that they think like this is a champion that if this and TF are up, we must pick this champion, and it's more important that we pick that champion than TF, and we're not giving them TF. So that's like number one reason. Number two reason is you're not willing to play it. Like those are the only two reasons you would ban TF on blue side.
Well, it was Hecarim. It was Hecarim in the game that they won, where they were on blue side. But here's the other thing, Mac, is their blue side bans, their first 3 blue side bans were Caitlyn, Twisted Fate, and Zeri. That scares me.
Bans. They were locked bans the whole time. Yeah, they had to ban Zeri and Caitlyn and TF. They were locked bans on both sides. They had like
if you're blue side and your bans are TF, Caitlyn, and Zeri, I'm scared. I'm actually
the draft was really hard for them unless they adapt. I remember commenting on this previously because like, what do you do on red side? You have 4 champions that you need to ban. You have to either find an answer to Zeri or Caitlyn or TF, or you have to find an answer to Hecarim, or you have to trade them. But they can't trade them because they don't. Like, I mean, you can start playing them, right? But they've shown so far they're not willing to play them. So unless they either find a counter to one of the ADCs or find like a matchup they're willing to play into Hecarim and build a comp that's good into Hecarim, which is perfectly possible, right? You can play the Tahm Kench, you can play the Sylas, you can play mobile ADCs, you can play Ezreal, stuff like this, right? Like even Xayah is really good against Hecarim. Like all of that is possible, which is probably the easiest one to do by far. Or you can figure out a trade that works for you. You know, you can trade Hecarim for TF and something like this, right? So I mean, they need to find that answer, otherwise the red side draft is very, very rough for them.
That's also one of the reasons I think it's going to be so hard for G2 anyway. Like, once you go into draft, like, this is another reason I thought people were a little bit harsh on Rogue with the drafting in that series. It's like, you do remember that we are calling Fnatic a legitimate super team where every player was supposed to be a potential all LEC player. How the fuck am I supposed to draft out? I can't, like, ban them out of all the draft. There's only 5 picks, for fuck's sake. Like, in Fnatic, someone is going to get a strong pick. That is going to happen. So essentially, when you play against Fnatic, it's pick your poison. So if you're G2, you're already a limited team, and you're going against a team where every player in theory is really good, has a whole bunch of champions they play. Like, here's the thing to me, Mark. In that scenario, I'm not expecting you can ban them out. My question just goes like this: what does it tell me about your psychology? What you choose to ban, which is kind of what you're going down the theory crafting angle here. Like, do I really have nothing against that? In which case, Mizzles, let him have it. Do I have like an answer for it? I personally don't think G2 has any room whatsoever in this draft. What can you possibly do?
I mean, the thing is, they need multiple of these answers, right? You can't just have one, because if you do that one and then lose a game or lose 2 games, like you can't do it again.
Yes,
they have to be able to play some of these picks that they're banning on blue side. Like, this is unacceptable. I look at the games in the last 2 games of the last series that they played. They gave up Zeri to Fnatic when they were on red side. So Fnatic first picks Zeri. Their answer is Aphelios Nautilus. Okay, then G2 is on blue side and they first pick Aphelios. Like, this isn't good. Like, the level of priority that they have on the Aphelios in these drafts and the bans that they're making is not optimal for the meta right now. They have to be able to play these picks.
Yeah. And the thing is that, like, there's a So referring back to the psychology point, I think there's two major points. There's one like blue versus red side, and there's two which is psychology. The psychology thing is like often someone's bans tell you what they think about you as a team, right? Like if they're banning X champion away from my mid laner every game, that tells me okay, they are not willing to play against a champion that gives me heavy mid power, for example, because they think we're too good at snowballing mid into top or whatever it happens to be. And there's a lot that those bans say, but both about like what G2 thinks about Fnatic and also what like their own identity is. And this is why I think it's really hard for them to adapt, because those bans basically say we cannot play 3v3 bot. And we cannot punish bot. Like we cannot play against aggressive 3v3 bots like Caitlyn Lux, and we also cannot play against a bot lane that just picks scaling and spits in our face and dares us to do something about it, like Zeri. Which makes things very, very difficult. The TF ban is obviously...
And we have to play Aphelios and pray to God that we get
200
the
years
game
just...
carry.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the other thing. Is that...
You have Flacked playing the Aphelios. You don't have Comp, who actually looked fucking pretty nice on the Aphelios. You know, all your eggs are in the Flacked basket at that point in time.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair to Flacked, I think his teamfight execution was way better. Like in the XL series, he was picked out a lot. Like just dying at the beginning of fights, and it looked like he was pretty nervous. I think in the next two series he had an easier time, but he looked way better. And he's a good Aphelios player. He has great resource upkeep. Like he's very consistent. He's a good player for sure. But I think the problem that you also end up running into on like the overall like big picture meta with blue versus red is that on blue, like when you really get into a series, very often it ends up being like, okay, what are the three champions we're not willing to give them or trade under any circumstance? This, and this. Okay, we ban that. And then blue side ends up being like, right, well, I'm picking all of my favorite champions because I'm blue side, and that's what you have to do on blue side, because red side normally gets more counter picks, especially on solo lanes. Like red side can choose either solo lanes or support, right, to counter pick, generally speaking. And so blue ends up being like, right, these are my favorite, bestest, blind pickest champions that I'm just going to take, and you can do something about it. And red's job is to actually like find counters and find compositional counters, whether those are in lane or whether it's making that champion useless. Like, I don't know, the Morgana into LeBlanc, random example from EDG versus SKT back in the day. But if you're so funneled into playing, like if you have to do that approach on red side, it's really bad for you. If you have to do an approach where it's like, okay, we must play this champion and this is our best blind pick champion, that's really, really hard for you. Like for example, like first picking Nautilus. I mean, maybe Nautilus is a bad example because a lot of teams think that Zeri Nautilus is like a super OP duo, and that like Nautilus is the best champion with and into Zeri.
Right. Okay.
And that also allows you to then, like, theoretically, if you go Aphelios Nautilus, then you can 3-pick top or mid. Like you can 3-pick mid, ban 2 counters, 5-pick top. So you end up and you 4-pick your jungler, and like you assume that you have more than 3 junglers in the pool, which is a fair assumption. So like in terms of draft structure, that can be fine, but I do feel that G2 is like really limited in that approach, you know, because they've basically shown that Caps is only willing to play one style of champion. And Broken Blade will always come up with a good counter pick, right? But their bot lane is very limited, and Caps is only playing facilitators. And there are for sure champions that like you're okay giving to Jankos as well. You know, I know he's had some successful Lee Sin games, but like you can give Jankos Lee Sin. It's fine. Like it's not going to be like a huge problem. So it's not like he'll always find something to be useful. It's not like you're going to ban him out, but it's also like not the end of the world to give him certain champions. And like against Jankos, it's very easy for a team to just be like, okay, we just ban the best thing for the comp. It's not like he's, you know, I don't feel like Jankos has any insane signature pocket pick champions that make the draft difficult, is what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like G2 lacks a bit of red side flexibility there, which makes it even more hard for them to play the red side draft with those bans.
I just feel that without Caps being like at the very peak of his form, and with a newer AD carry that can't take certain priorities, the only thing you're really afraid of with G2 is Broken Blade.
You're not terrified of the Caps, Lysandra Ari? Give me a break. It's the way he's playing these champions, and people have the gall to be like, Thorin, what do you mean? Where's Caps? Like, are you for real? Where is he?
He played LeBlanc against Vizio.
Okay, there's one.
But that's actually a development. Like he wasn't willing to do that.
True.
Like we saw LeBlanc be like completely passed over by G2 the whole time, which is an interesting development. So maybe that's something that they're picking up.
Let me spin it this way though, Mac. I'll tie it back into the question about what it implies. Because, by the way, if people don't know, that's the reason in CSGO I was always so interested in the map draft. It actually implies what you think the other team is going to play like and what you're afraid of dodging from, basically. It's not just my guy is the best on this character pick. That's like a first order effect people aren't thinking of, right? So another thing I would think about is this, mate, is when I look at people drafting against caps, there's so many champions they're leaving open, dude, that he just clearly isn't playing in scrims. Like you can even tell they know it isn't the old caps. Like they're just leaving shit up. He would have just like picked that just to force the draft in the past or to punish you. You know, you don't really worry about what he's going to pick at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that there's a counter argument to that, which is that basically I feel like Faker has kind of done the same thing this split. I feel like Faker is playing like loads and loads and loads of facilitators.
Okay,
he's
yes, but he's much better.
He's got Gumayushi in the bot lane.
He's got Gumayushi and also Zeus, who like fast forward to T1 versus Gen.G was like turbo stomping every single game.
You have to have people to facilitate.
Yes.
You know, that's and like you can say Broken Blade is certainly doing that, but also, I mean, the level that the rest of his teammates are playing on right now is kind of fucking ridiculous. And I think Zeus is very good, right? But there's also the fact that Korea might be the best player in the world right now, and the fact that he can just like he and Owner and Faker can just team up to feed the ever-loving shit out of Zeus and Gumayushi and Gumayushi just plays Jinx every game, so I guess he just gets incredibly fed and then gets a bazillion resets, right? So I mean they're playing a very specific style. Also, Faker is doing things with Rise, for example, that other players don't do. He just will just abandon mid lane randomly and leave just watch huge waves go into his turret while he realm warps into top or bottom, right? He is playing that way, but also his Ahri play is a billion times better than anybody except
Holy moly, his Ahri. Holy moly, it was so good.
Dude, it's also the way he plays. Some of the games that he plays where Korea's on Tom Kench, and Korea will literally just eat the Ahri and then teleport into the battle, and then Ahri just pops out and starts ulting the backline. It's fucking insane to watch. Nobody else does that shit.
Oh, here's the difference. When I watch Bjergsen Ahri, it's like he's playing some sort of fucking fan giveaway in Team Liquid's fan club thing, where he's in a VR thing where he's it's like I'm in the game, bloody hell. Oh, but then I'll get too close to this. Exactly, it's night and day. That's the problem, Mac. They might play the same champions, but they don't have faith. That's the problem, you know.
Truly, the Ahri test. The Ahri test is the test of our time for mid laners right now, because it's one of those picks that either does fucking nothing or looks incredibly OP when Faker or Rookie is playing it, right?
Sure.
And it's just a matter of how you play the pick. The skill expression is definitely there for top tier players, even on utility builds, to do immense things with Ahri.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you can play it multiple ways as well. You know, I think while Chovy didn't look insane on it, right? You can play a high DPS go and one-shot someone Ahri, super high resource upkeep, or you can play it as a facilitator, which I think is the more common and honestly the better approach in most cases. But the decision making on the champion is equally important. If you're playing a facilitator, it's usually more about your decision making than it is about your anything else, your mechanics, right? Which is why it's exactly that way with Rise, right? Rise super simple champion, it's pure decision making. But with Ahri, it's both, you know. And a lot of the time you'll find with players that I know a lot of players that will be super vocal players that will shot call for the team, but if they play Yasuo or Aurelia, they don't talk because they have to be so focused on themselves, on their own mechanics. Now, those are obviously a big step up from Ahri, but the fact that you actually have a decent amount of mechanical depth to Ahri and execution variance with the champion, plus that it's a champion that requires you to move the map so well, I think is a really good litmus test for mid laners.
It's also super nice that with Ahri that you have a lot of decisions to make. You are gonna, you're gonna play Electrocute early so that you have some, early game burst damage. You are gonna build Everfrost first. But then it just depends on how you're doing and how the game state is. You have so many options past that point in time. You can go Dark Seal and start getting stacks. You can play more defensively if you want. You can, as Chovy did in the game Gen.G 1, have a huge lead, go Horizon focus death cap and just snipe people. There's a lot of different ways that the Ahri can build after the first item that makes it incredibly versatile to the game state and the composition that you're playing.
Absolutely.
I've got a question for you, right? Being as I'm pretty sure almost no one in the world who's an analyst is going to pick G2 to win against Fnatic. I think most people expect Fnatic to win the series, probably comfortably, easily. Go back to them, we'll have a rematch, which obviously is cool because it's going to pick up all the narratives of the Rogue match again, right? Here's my question though, right? If they play the way they're playing currently, Mac, the kinds of comps they're playing, the lanes they're playing through, like to me, they're the most telegraphed team is G2. The question goes like this. Who is the player who could be the difference maker that could actually let them beat Fnatic? Who would you pick? Who would you put out there as this has to be the X factor? Who should we look for?
So, I think, I mean, so right now you have like a structure where you have like a facilitator mid, Jankos, who's historically been a facilitator, jungler, and a rookie AD carry who's like a high resource carry player, but like in the team he's playing a weak side role.
We're probably going to force Helios to him anyway.
Yeah, I mean, one of them has to like step up and carry some games, right? I mean, realistically, I think the most likely candidate should be Caps, right? He's the one who's like historically been more aligned to that role. He's the one with the pedigree. He's the one with the LeBlanc and Akali, you know. Whereas, like, I think I think that's not Jankos's area, you know. I think he is a really, really insane like jungler at sacrificing himself. But I think when you've put him in games where he has to like play for himself and go and like mess the enemy jungler up and carry. Like he plays some like aggressive early games, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's the type of player that like puts the game on his back. I think he hands it off to someone else. I don't think you can realistically ask Flakkid to do that. Like that's just not fair, for lack of a better word. So I mean, it has to be Caps, right? It has to be, like I said, Caps. Caps can, if Caps starts playing TF, LeBlanc busts out an Akali, plays like a Sylas versus like, you know, if he sees like Hecarim, right? If he sees two good Sylas ultis and busts out a Sylas game and carries, like those are the angles that I think G2 has to look for.
That feels like the obvious blueprint they should be looking at. Wait a minute, we might have to play against TF. Oh, did this last guy just win with 3 games of silence? You let Silas play a Caps, you fucking idiot. Get it back in, roll it back, get the video out, get him like Malcolm from Clockwork Orange, just watch it all season 10 minutes, and then let's fucking play the series. There you go. There's the coaching tip for you there, Dylan Falco. A little bit unorthodox, more in the JAT/LS sort of coaching school, but you know, I'm not going to get you fired, so don't worry.
I think you just have to go for it. I think even if Caps isn't in form, I agree. You have to throw the Hail Mary at this point in time and just pray to God he carries and actually prioritize his picks, because that's the only way you realistically win.
Like, by the way, I would even say, I'll tie it into the conversation we had about LCS at the beginning, Monty. Right, you've already played Fnatic in a whole series. They convincingly beat you. You've seen them almost beat Rogue. They look like they are the second or the best team in the LCS. You've even watched them throughout the whole split. You've played all those scrims. If you come into this series, Monty, from game 1, you come in with the unusual draft. You don't wait until game 3 to pull it out. Like, you don't come in with the boring, normal meta G2 draft game. Well, like, you come out the gates trying somewhat unusual. You try and throw them off a bit. You try and add a wrinkle. If they do that, then I have some hope that they're actually playing.
I mean, the one game they won was Caps on Karma mid.
Yep. They have to do something weird. And there's a clip of Humanoid being like, this champion is completely fucking useless. And then the Karma's actually really useful.
Well, look, all I'm going to say is you saw a lot of Karma bans in the LCK finals this last week. That ended up being pretty heavily contested overall. Now, part of it was because it got to a weird priority state in the Gen.G Damwon series where they were just both teams were just spamming Ezreal Karma, and then we saw it in the first game of the finals as well. So it was like kind of a unique regional meta, but it is a strong pick.
Yeah. And I mean, G2 is going to have to show the adaptation from game 1 because they're probably going to be red side game 1 because they're coming from the lower bracket, right? So I'm pretty sure G2 will
is that how it works? The upper team picks first?
Should be.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure Fnatic will have side select, which means they'll probably be blue side, unless they're planning on doing something weird and counter picking for top in game 1. But like, I don't think so, given what we saw in previous games. I think there's no way that they play like that.
No.
So I'm pretty sure they're going to be blue side, and it's going to be like TF or LeBlanc first pick, unless G2 does something about it, or like trades
or Zeri
whatever,
again.
Right? Yeah, or Zeri. So like G2 is going to be in the exact same bind as we discussed previously from game 1. So yeah, they're going to need to adapt, and realistically, they're most likely going to be red side on like in order to win the series, they have to win on red side multiple times, right? Like, because they start on red side, they need 3 wins. So like they need to win on red side at least once, right? In theory, if the game goes to 5, then they have 1 red side win and 2 blue side wins, which means they must cheese 1 win on red and then win their next two blue side games. If like red side is completely unplayable and they only have 1 shot in the tank, it means like the first one has to be good. Or at least one, no, not the first one. One of them has to be good. They have 3 chances on red side to find one answer that fixes their draft. Which doesn't sound that unlikely.
When this series happens, by the way, I'm not even cheering against G2, but I really hope G2 loses. Not even because I'm a Fnatic fan, but because I need to see that series again. I need to see Rogue versus Fnatic in the final. Yeah, because if people don't get it, the way that series played out, that is now a series where any result is possible.
Yes.
It could be like 3-0 for either team. It could be a 3-2. It could be the best games. It could be the worst game. That looks like it's literally like it's the ticket right now with League of Legends. So unfortunately, I feel like if G2 Miracle somehow wins the game, they just ruin the fucking final. So I also, as well, here's the thing that's different about me compared to most people, is if I like someone and I want to see them succeed, I never want them to do it the easy way. I wouldn't want G2 to like fluke win a game off some like weird pick and then Rogue easily win. I want Rogue and Larson to have to actually go against literally the people that is the hurdle they have to clear. I want Larson to play Humanoid and them to play against the Fnatic super team, and if they're going to actually be champions of LEC, do it against the other best team. That would be the best possible storyline. That's what I want to see happen. There we go.
I want to see. I want to see that finals after that best of 5. I agree with you that it doesn't feel like we have a clear favorite after watching that, because I think both teams will have very interesting adaptations to what occurred, and that there were a lot of weird variables like the early game leads that Rogue had that shouldn't preclude an excellent Humanoid Twisted Fate performance. Potentially, it's still a very dangerous pick in spite of the fact that he lost 3 straight games on it. I think the circumstances of those losses mitigate the kind of poor performance of the pick.
Yeah, I think 2 of those 3 losses were kind of team losses, very much team losses.
I'll even play a bit of devil's advocate, right? Because here's the problem. If you look at like I published on Twitter, the raw stats of like Humanoid in the last 3 games is like, 119 and 5 or something. Meanwhile, Larson's like, 21 and 6, or some like the contrast looks crazy, right? But I want to make a very clear point here, right? Which is that I actually would prefer my star mid laner loses like that if he is going to lose. Like, there's a story of some people might know this story. It's a classic story, which is towards the end of Kobe Bryant, the basketball player's career. He had that season where he was injured. If people don't know, it was in 2014. And while he was injured, they filmed a documentary about him, right? Because he had all this downtime. And so what he was doing if you don't know, when you film a documentary, you just film everything. You just film the guy every chance you get, because the idea is you're going to cut it all together, and you never know when you'll get like a little gem, like one line that you'll use. So the guy who was the director was just hanging out with Kobe all the time, and even went to a bunch of games with him, right? And they went to a specific game where I think it was the Lakers playing, and they were playing against, I remember it was the Brooklyn Nets, right? And at the time, Deron Williams, the point guard, played for the Brooklyn Nets, right? And there's a story where he basically just missed like his first like 9 shots or something. And so for the rest of the game, he just didn't shoot much, and he ended, like, I'm going to make up a number here. Let's say he ended, I don't know, 1 for 12 or something, right? At the end of the game, Kobe actually turned to this director of the documentary and said, see, that would never happen to me, because if I go 0 for 9, I'm going 0 for 30. And if you don't understand that mentality, you don't actually understand what it takes to be a champion. Because here's, by the way, why I don't fuck with people like Reckless, etc. Because what I've seen them do in their career is this: when they're losing a game, they just go, better lose by as little as possible. And then they just min-max very carefully. They're just outside a target range on a team fight. At the end of the game, 1, 2, 4, and they go, well, you know what? Couldn't find the fight I needed. I want it like Humanoid. Go out on your shield, mate. If you're going to lose, try and actually break this game back open, or just lose harder. I'm not joking. I'm not trolling. Listen, obviously the performances, yes, they were bad. That goes without saying. But at least he was still going for it. At least he's still trying to make something happen in the game.
Yeah, he knows he's good on TF.
Mate, you're playing a champion like TF. You can escape. You could make yourself look okay in a loss. Plenty of ways on that champion,
Yeah. I mean, I think to be fair to him, like, he put himself in the best position that he could in a lot of the really rough games, right? Like, even in the games where his team is like, frankly, just fucked. He's still on curve in terms of items. He's still like highest CS in the game. He's still like doing the things that he's supposed to do. And like, sure, with a player like Humanoid, I think I've discussed it before, like, he will always go in, and I think this is just what the good players do. They will always back themselves to make the most difficult mechanical play possible. And like, if you have a conversation with these players and you try to tell them, which a lot of coaches I think do, and a lot of people do in general, tell them like, oh, but why go for this when you could go for like a slightly less risky player? It's like, because I know I can do this one. Like, don't talk to me. And like, that's just how good players think. That's just how champions think. Because I can do this. I can do this incredibly difficult play that no one else can do, and I can execute it perfectly, and I will always gamble on myself to make that play. And that's how you end up with like miracle comeback wins. You don't find them by like losing as little as possible. Like, you have to obviously find like the best moment possible, and you have to find your highest probability. But sometimes your highest probability is going to be like a 25% chance that you get a kill and a 75% chance that you go 0-5. Sometimes that's your best chance. And the like really, really great players will take those chances, and they will be the best ones at finding those chances, even in impossible situations.
Shall we talk about our predictions and then LCK?
Right.
I still think Rogue's going to win. I still think Rogue's going to win.
I'd still take him to win, yes.
I think that the mentality that they showed in this best of 5, their capability of reverse sweeping, I don't think they're going to make the same mistakes when it comes to if they face Fnatic again with like the Lulu picks and the early game shenanigans that caused them a lot of issues. I think they worked out some of their draft, and I think they're going to have more tricks up their sleeve, and they'll be better rested because they don't have to play back-to-back games on the final weekend.
The back-to-back is a
brutal,
big factor. It's actually a huge factor. I think it's a massive disadvantage for lower bracket, which is fine, right? Like that's the cost of going through lower bracket. You can argue that like you want the final to be more even because it's a final, which is also fair play. I think that it's going to be 5 games. I think that Rogue has a really good ability to adapt, like way better than I've ever seen them have in the past. I think they're way more adaptable than they ever have been, which is a big plus for BO5. I think Fnatic had, like I said, like the worst day at the office ever, and they looked mega tilted to me. The question is whether they can like untilt, right? I think if Fnatic has like a super good BO5 against G2 and comes in, like imagine they play like, you know, a clean 3-0 stomp and they go to bed and get a nice early sleep and then come into the studio rested the next day, I think they'll be fine. If they play like a super, like, and in that scenario, I think they would win because I think like they have enough time to get their shit together. And Humanoid is a player that I trust in a lot to do that. Like he steps up a lot in the general team atmosphere in terms of like teaching people the game and like getting people on the same page when it comes to playoffs. So I would have a lot of faith in him for that. But I think if they like look super messy and they play like a really messy 5-game series and barely scrape it out against G2 and they just like edge it out in a couple of team fights mechanically and they don't look like a better team. I mean, maybe this is a bit of a cop out, but I think like the like actual like tilt and exhaustion factor and annoyance can actually make them lose, because I think this is a team that can be pretty volatile in terms of like personality, you know. I mean, we haven't talked about it, but I think it's worth saying that like I don't think that Upset has shown yet that he's capable of performing to his best level under pressure. I don't think he's
a bit invisible.
That. Yeah, I don't think he's shown that yet. And I think that there's more pressure on Fnatic this time around than there is on Rogue because of the narrative coming into it and because of the mental edge that we talked about with Rogue previously. So I think that's going to be a huge factor. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's going to go 5 games. I would still, on balance, take Fnatic, but I could really easily see Rogue actually winning.
I think a factor you brought up that's an interesting one is obviously the fact that you essentially have to play back-to-back because you're coming through the lower bracket. That means, by the way, G2 doesn't even have to win. G2 can potentially scupper Fnatic's whole chances to win just by making it a super drawn-out, messy series. Like, you waste like 5 hours of their fucking time in a mega draining series, back and forth, and all the talks and discussions and draft sessions. That's gonna make it harder for them to win when they go to the final. And you're going to potentially expose all the draft fucking corners and niches and nooks and crannies and solutions because you have to try and win the game. So yeah, to me, I would look how the first series goes. Like for me, if you're Fnatic, you got to just take care of the first series nice and clean, then we can have a brilliant final. And I'll still take Rogue to win it, but I just hope for like that series great games. The first couple of games were mega entertaining.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think the value of the like night's sleep that you get before is so unbelievably underestimated, especially because so a big like physiological factor is that like the lights at the studio are bright. They are really, really fucking bright LEDs, and those things mess up your sleep really bad. And that's a pretty big factor. Also, like there's a big emotional component. Like if they do play a really shitty series and they barely scrape out a win, like they're going to go home really tilted. And that's not good. And like you don't like if you do go that late, you get home at like midnight or whatever.
It also gives you less time to prepare, and preparing for G2 versus Rogue are very, very different propositions.
And there's a mega OP advantage that the upper bracket team gets. They don't need to review your VODs. They watch them first live, then they review them. So they even actually get to save time that you don't because you were playing during that time. So yeah, the edges go so heavily for the upper bracket team to me.
Yeah, I think so as well.
But fair enough. It is a double limp. We're supposed to have an edge, so there's one.
I think what people also don't know is that there's like a really early dress rehearsal the next day. Actually, like you have to do a full tech rehearsal of the whole opening ceremony and everything. So normally, when you play a game, you play playoffs and you start your match at 5. You get to the studio at 3, for example. That would be pretty chill, you know. Even if you played a BO5 the night before, like for a lot of players, that's okay, you know. And if that was the case, then you would like, you know, you let people wake up at like 1 o'clock. They come into the office or whatever, grab their stuff, and then you go and you get to the studio at 3, and then like you can have a decent night's sleep. But like on finals day, at least last year, we had to be there at like midday, and you're there for like a whole day doing tech rehearsals, like standing around on the stage. Like there's a lot of like physical tiredness that accumulates. I will say that for the winning team, it's also like if you also, I mean, I also didn't really want to stay up like and watch the series from the losers bracket, because it's also like, well, I mean, okay, I'm an early riser, so I'm early to bed. So like staying up and watching a series till like midnight also screws my sleep up. So it's like makes it harder to prepare, you know. And you don't know who you're going to play against, right? If you're waiting in the final, you actually don't know. So you have like double the emphasis of prep, except it can all change because they can all play different stuff in that series. So it's not like that cut and dry in terms of preparation advantage, but like physiological endurance wise, there's a big edge.
I lie though, if I was Rogue, I would very cynically prep 90% for Fnatic in this case.
Yeah, I actually prepped like most. I prepped mostly G2 last year in spring, and then Rogue came through in the final, and I was like, right.
Oops. That's just how it works.
I was so sure that it was going to be G2, and then they got completely stopped. I was like, okay, I guess we're drafting against Rogue tomorrow.
All right, let's talk about LCK a little bit, because the finals were the expected result, but I'm gonna go on a little bit.
They did the undefeated season, because remember it was based on series.
Yep, did the undefeated season. I think that's probably the greatest record. We talked about how winter 2013, 2014, and winning 15 consecutive games might have been the biggest, but I think this is the biggest one now, especially considering that, you know, they only dropped one game in the final. Before we do that, though, and Mac, don't comment on this, I do have to go on a little bit of a rant here, which is that thank fucking God we have Korean production, because that opening ceremony, which actually showed the legacy of the league, was fucking awesome. And this is the problem when Riot NA gets involved in shit and Riot HQ starts saying, you know, maybe we should make this a KDA advertisement, or a, you know, let's just throw the Imagine Dragons singing the Arcane song in there, and they turn it into a corporate advertisement for their game. I understand that the fans may enjoy these aspects of your intellectual property. However, using your most important matches to not tell the stories of the tournaments is fucking terrible. It is god awful. When you used the 10-year anniversary of Worlds in China to show Ari in like augmented reality dancing around on a stage, that is fucking cringe, guys. Nobody cares about that shit when it's happening. People are there to learn about the stories. If you want people to watch your future esports events who are tuning in for the first time because they hear it's a world finals and they don't get any storylines or sense of history or attachment to the human beings who are players, you are not going to retain viewers. Okay? That's just how it works. And if you want to know why Korean esports have been successful for 25 years now, it's because they focus on the storylines and the legacy and the history of their leagues and their players first. Did you notice any Riot IP in that entire sequence? No. It also is epic because Riot Korea, by the way, has all the OGN producers now. They just hired them when they took the league internal. So it is still Riot doing this technically, but the people who are doing it are the OGs of Korea, or learned from them, because they are still using the exact same structure of the show for finals that OGN has used when I was there starting 10 years ago, guys. It goes like this. Okay? They do some kind of epic intro. This one was about the history of the league. Then Caster John walks on stage and does the player introductions and hypes up the audience. Then they immediately go to their pre-produced hype intro, right? Which hypes up the audience more. Then they go to player trash talk, right? And then they go into some pre-game analysis and start the game. It is the same structure every single time. But why we like it being the same is because you know what to expect. Me as a viewer, I'm like, I know the hype video is going to come right after this intro. I'm excited to see like what they did stylistically for this time. I love the fact that they had all these legacy players. I was like tearing up, guys, because this is epic. This is the history of my life, was casting these players and watching these players. And it brings back so many memories. And people ask the question, well, why does LCK have so many viewers compared to LPL, even though it objectively hasn't been the most competitive league for the last few years? It's been close, but it hasn't been number one. And the answer is because people have emotional reaction to seeing and remembering the history of this league. And it is constantly, constantly, constantly celebrated. And it was so fucking awesome to see all those players on stage again and have that nod to their legacies. And how awesome was it for the players to be there and feel like they were being honored, that they played a critical role in the shaping of this league. It was extremely well done. It was extremely well done, guys. And I guess we're just going to see whether LCS is going to do something similar for their 10-year now that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks in Houston, or whether we're just going to get a bunch of fucking Ari dancing on stage again that has absolutely no meaning. Okay?
Exactly. If I wanted to see an Ari dancing on stage that has absolutely no meaning, I'll wait till Bjergsen locks it in the final. No, but here's the thing, though. On a very real note, actually, that's what I thought was so cool, Monty, is this was like the League of Legends equivalent of what they just did in the NBA, where they did the NBA 75 greatest players of all time, and they brought them all out. And if people don't know, by the way, this is one of the coolest aspects of this that people will miss. You wouldn't see it on camera. But the coolest part about the NBA 75-year thing, Monty, was like all the players themselves thought it was epic. So like if you were like a young player, like LeBron, you're meeting some guy from the 60s, like, can I get your autograph? Like, that's cool as fuck. That actually makes it feel like it's like a lineage and a fucking brotherhood of great players. And as you say, you obviously impacted the game, so we're celebrating you, even though now the game's way bigger. Like, if you do that right, it just engenders so much goodwill towards the sport, the league, the game, the great memories. So I certainly hope, at a minimum, at least fucking listen to this and pull your finger out and do something. Because imagine if they had that in NA. Imagine if they had Dyrus walk out with fucking Darshan and with Afro Mu and all the great players on stage. It would be so sick.
This is why people continue to watch it. People are like, I wonder why LCS doesn't have any viewers. It's because you lost touch with your entire fucking history of your league. You never celebrated it, and you're starting to do it now. I will admit, it has changed. They started to do things like, I was really impressed when they had a discussion before the 100 Thieves Immortals game where it was like talking about Someday and Arrow and showing them on stage winning the Korean title together. Like, that was much better, guys. Like, good job. But there is it goes to show that you lost years and years and years and years and years where you could have been doing this. And LEC has gotten a lot better about doing this since they became their own product, talking constantly about the history of the league, having these through lines, having people who have been there like Shox and Quickshot for the entirety of the league, being able to tell the stories, and them really even taking their newcasters and forcing them to tell the stories in these monologues about, here's the classic matchup between these two players or between these two teams. Here are the remaining players on these rosters. And it's not fake in LEC, it's good. But the way Korea does it, where you really just fucking feel the importance and the weight and the history of the league, and it is 100% about the players and the teams. You got to see in that like cool like augmented reality thing where they had the X for the 10 and the stage was shaped like an X for the 10. And then you got to see like all of the champions like in a row by the seasons that they won. It was just wonderful. And you know, it made me very nostalgic for casting. You know, I wanted to be there casting it, and it's the first time I felt that way in a while, because of the history and because of the stories that could be told. And it was really well done. So shout out to Riot Korea for absolutely crushing that. But also, like, it's not even that hard. It's just that the focus in the West has been so bad about how to make a good sports product. And the focus at Worlds has been so bad. You shouldn't have the most important matches in the international tournament of the year upstaged by rock bands or by dancing AR champions. Like, this is the time to really celebrate those players and make sure that the most important matches are seen in the way that they should be seen. Like, just decide, Riot, is this a sport? Or is it not a sport? Because if it's not a sport, then just plaster it with ads for your stupid skin lines. If it is a sport, we need to talk about the history of the players, and that needs to come before any star fucking, because you got the latest hot rock band. I guarantee you guys, Riot, I guarantee you, more people who actually are fans of your esport care about Faker than they do about Imagine Dragons. So why are you showing me Imagine Dragons? Seriously. Why?
By the way, how epic did that tweet look where you lay out all the LCK/OGN titles that Faker has? And spoiler, there's one for every year minus 2018 and 2021. That's why my tweet was like, oh, 2018 and 2021. Yeah, those were the years I didn't win LCK. Very disconcerting. Like, this motherfucker, like, what? He's been playing since 2013, guys. Like, this is mental. It's only when you see it laid out, it is so absurd. It's so 10 titles. By the way, to even be a relevant player on a championship team,
It's like
10 years
half
later,
the titles that have
existed. That's absurd, isn't it?
It's
close
actually
absurd.
madness. It's actually insane. And like the thing that like gets me so much about Faker, is that like League is a game that is patched every 2 weeks. Like if you look at like Counter-Strike, a lot of the pro players there, I'm not very clued up on Counter-Strike, but they're a lot older in like average age, right, in terms of pro players, because the game like moves less. There's also some concerns about like League is a long league, whereas Counter-Strike has a different format, blah blah blah. There's like factors there, but like League, I think, forces a lot of people out of being good because of how often the game changes and how often the skill set that's required to play your role changes. And mid lane is the hardest role, and it's the role with the most facets. It's the role that with the most nuance, the most complexity, the highest level of competition, and the greatest number of playstyles. So to have a player
champion pool as well.
Yeah, exactly. So to have a player who can be that good for that long and adapt that well really just speaks to like the infinite class that Faker has. Like it's actually absurd that a player can be that good for that long. Like I don't know of really any other player who's even been like close to that level of sustained success with such a broad number of champions and a broad style of champions, right? Like there are many players who are great in their own right, who like wax and wane and come and go according to when their own style is best or when they get facilitated the correct way in their team. But Faker has like done it all. You know, Faker's been like the star player, he's been the facilitator, like he's been playing everything from control mages to assassins to facilitators to gankers to divers. Like he literally
72 different
everything.
professional champions at this point in time, which is like half the champions in
Legends. If you think about it,
it's
literally,
not like Faker is like, you know, a 10 out of 10 on every single one of those champions.
Of course not.
But he's like an 8.5 or a 9 on the vast majority of those champions. And that's something that basically no one else in the world can say.
Like, think about all the different styles of mid lane. So you have like the assassin player, like that's literally how Faker made his name. Fucking like DFG, RE, fucking Z, everything phase. Then you have like the boring mage player. Spoiler, like Faker was an amazing Orianna player, became a very good Azir player. Then you switch over. What about if you play supportive for the side lanes like Galio and TF? Yeah, he only did that at 2 different worlds and got his team like almost to the final in both. Like the guy is doing absolutely everything. He, even if people don't remember, he used to play the original Lulu mid and kill people with it. He used to kill people with the Lulu. This guy is he's just the god of the game.
And then not only that, but he'll just like randomly in a finals just like pull out a Riven for no reason and then body people, or he'll just play mid lane Master Yi when no one else is doing it. He still does that shit. Like, I'm just going to play Kai'Sa mid lane. It's fine. I'm the only one who can do it, by the way. Everyone else just sucks even when they try and imitate me. So that's it. Just Faker's own little personal pocket that no one else has. It's pretty fantastic.
He's too good.
And it's nice to see a resurgence, especially after Worlds last year, where he was playing a highly supportive style, and he's still doing that, but he definitely looks like he's in significantly better form than he was at the World Championship.
Yeah.
We want to talk about this actual matchup. I thought it would go 3-1 to T1 because I figured there was going to be one of two things would happen. There would either be a game where they stack dragons early, because that's Gen.G puts a much higher priority on dragons, and they go for dragons in 6 minutes. And they were playing this like Ezreal Karma lane, and they were playing very aggressively to control the dragons early. So I figured there would either be a game where they got Soul early and won, or Chovy would just pop the fuck off in one game, and that would
He's gonna get one game exactly. You got to give him one. Come on, as he did here. Perfect example.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think it's weird though, because like for sure, I saw in the series, like in like many cases, I think in like at least 3 of the games, Gen.G got the first 2 dragons basically uncontested, right? The things to note from that, I think that were real defining factors of the series is number one, that T1 is super willing, like that plays into their style actually, and I think that Gen.G is actually a really good matchup for T1. Like I think they were always going to struggle against this team with the identity they have, because T1 is like the best at giving up dragons for jungle tempo and then going and murdering your jungler, and in this case your top laner. Which is basically what happened every time they were giving up dragons. When they were giving up dragons, they were usually giving up jungle camps on top side, positioning on Herald, like dives on top lane, and like top lane was so unplayable in this series. Top lane was so unplayable in this series, which can be okay if you then back it up by your bot lane having significant leads and turning that into early dragon points, like dragon soul points. But I actually thought that Gen.G's Drake control was really poor. in the series. I think a lot of the dragons they got were like almost by accident, where there were just like these like 50-50 situations on the dragon where both teams were just like smite fighting it, you know? I didn't feel like they ever really set up for dragons proactively beforehand and like use the advantages they should in theory have from the early game to actually get those. So I think it was rough for them, especially because like I think the other thing that makes it a hard matchup for them is that T1 have like a really, really good style playing from mid jungle aggressively, right? When Faker is playing something that can push and Owner is playing something that can go and invade you. And Owner is like so good at playing with early leads. And like inherently the mid lane matchups that they are trying to play, at least in the first two games, because Chovy is the player that he is, because he is a like high CS per minute laning scaling player for the most part. At least that's the way he looks the best, I think. That makes the matchup so hard because it basically means that in order to pick your champions, you're like guaranteed seeding mid prio, which means your jungler is getting like hurt actively, and Owner is just like the best with early leads, and Zeus was like gapping your top laner, and yeah, so then they ended up getting dragons, and the whole thing like their top lane was so hard to play.
Yeah, I also, you know, I think Ruler and Chovy played pretty well overall. I think throughout playoffs we also saw Peanut randomly dying or making really risky decisions that didn't actually pan out. I think we saw that in the third game of the series where he, attempts an early gank trying to get Doran ahead on Camille. They don't actually end up getting the kill. Unfortunately, it was very close, but at that point in time, Owner just reacts with like extensive counter jungling on the Viego. Then the Viego gets basically super powered and Peanut can't do anything for the rest of the game. There were other instances of just randomly getting caught out by Peanut that were really, really problematic. I think with T1, one of their great strengths is that they have an extreme priority on First Herald because they like to snowball gold leads and basically select where they are able to put pressure and like advance one of the lanes on the map. And their timing on this is always just amazing if you watch it, especially Korea's timing, because oftentimes what he will do is he'll exit lane at level 5 and then on his way to First Herald spawn, he will soak 6 off the mid wave and then just show up and body people at the dragon or at the Herald fight. So their timings are just really amazing around their power spikes and these objectives, and they just have it down to a science. So fighting them at First Herald is often a very, very bad idea because the entire team is designed basically to take those kind of advantages. I think Doran is a big issue for Gen.G. He is not the kind of carry top laner that you necessarily want.
Does this guy get all these gigs, mate? How does he keep getting these gigs?
I absolutely
Every
hate
year he's on a top Korean fucking team, and I'm like, he's okay, but like, how does he keep getting these jobs? Like I said, this region just fucking spawns out of nowhere. Like God take carry top laners, but now the problem is we're going to bloody LPL.
It's really disturbing how many good carry top laners they have. Like
too many.
It's very strange.
It's unfair. Actually, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, speaking about T1 generally, I think their first 8 minutes is really, really amazing. Like looking, and that was the case at Worlds as well. Obviously, it's different lineup, right? But like at Worlds, I think that like T1 and EDG, along with like Damwon to a lesser extent, had like by far the best in the world, like top 3 first 8 minutes of the game. I think they were like incredible. And like you said, like the timings, they obviously have like really, really well drilled set pieces in those early games. They do the same way every single game. Or at least like there are strong patterns. Maybe not every single game, that's an exaggeration, but they have really strong patterns. I think the big trend, like weird trend for this series for me, given what we know about T1 with like how good they are at snowballing and how high their early Herald prio is, I honestly felt like Gen.G didn't have a good read on them or couldn't adapt because like the way they were drafting was so scaling focused, and it was like the fact that they picked Yuumi so many times. Like when you pick Yuumi, it's really hard to get mid prio in the first 6 levels. So when you end up picking like Yuumi LeBlanc, like you're kind of dooming your top laner in many cases. And like they managed to like come back into one of the games where they were super like hard behind. I think for example game 2 they had like a way better draft. They had Alistar versus short range carries that he loves playing against. They had like Zaya who can kite back against Diana, who's like really happy with that. They had Akali who's hard outscaling. They got completely like murdered in the early game, but Akali got 2 windows back into the game. Lucian died twice, and then like the game's really hard for for T1 from that point because Akali is just so much better than him later on. But from then on, like I think game 3, for example, I really hated the draft if I remember correctly. Let me just check it. Like they had
I mean, they have no
see.
engage with this draft, basically.
Yeah, I mean they have Lee Sin, LeBlanc.
Oh,
and
Gen.G.
then-
Sorry, I thought you were talking about T1.
Oh no, yeah. I think T1's draft was like okay because they're outranging and usually poke is kind of good into Xayah. The Yuumi like makes up for it to a certain extent, but like when you pick Yuumi here, you're like you can contest this mid 2v2. This is like one of the first mid 2v2s they have where they can aggressively contest with Lee Sin LeBlanc against Ari Viego. But if you have Yuumi, you're like basically just seeding bot lane prior, which means that like enemy bot lane is just going to move mid and they're going to move into top anyway. And I think if I remember correctly, this game, yeah, top lane was completely open this game at like 8 minutes or something. Like Camille was just completely out of the game because like Ari and Viego can just move freely into top every single time. Every time you either take a dragon or every time your bot lane like has to accept a stacked wave, bot lane can base, come through mid, get the prio, you go top, and then Camille can't play the game. So I think that the Yuumi pick was really awkward for them. The ending to this game was super weird. Like game 3 was the game that Gen.G should have won.
They got soul awkwardly.
They got soul. Yeah, they got like a super awkward soul where like the T1 really botched their dragon setup, and then like the end team fight was actually so disappointing. It was so sad. Like they have a really like aggressive Baron call, and there's like 3 people on the Baron, and LeBlanc Yuumi are hiding across the wall, and LeBlanc Yuumi just like never watches the fight, like never joins the fight. They just like they have a choice between trying to go on like the T1 people who are collapsing or joining the fight, and they never join, and then they just sit there like watching the fight, and then they just lose the fight. And it's so sad to watch. Like if they're on the 3-man unit, they hard win the fight, and the game's over there. So it could have been like a 5-game series, which is kind of sad. And yeah, it was a really sad ending to watch. Like they ace them and they TP top, and they literally don't have a single minion. Like all of the minions die, and they just end. They take 3 towers with no minions and just end the game, and you're like, oh, those are the worst ones to lose. Holy moly, when you've outscaled and then you make a blunder and lose, like those are the absolute worst games to lose.
I think what was disappointing, I think I was underwhelmed by T1's performance overall in this series because they had so many times. Like you say that you think Gen.G's dragon control was bad. I counter with T1 was like hard flipping a lot of dragons that they should have been able to have priority over. And that ended up in scenarios where they would give souls or soul points over to Gen.G. And only now, of course, the day after, do we find out that 4 of T1's players had COVID, which probably explains a lot. Also, I'm glad they played if they wanted to play, but let's just talk about this. It's a little weird that they were all feeling sick and then didn't get COVID tested conveniently right before the finals. Like, that's a little odd.
I think if you're a player, you would probably ask to play anyway. You know?
Sure. I'm just saying that given the restrictions, it does seem like they were intentionally not tested, or didn't say that they were feeling ill because they didn't want to be tested, right? I'm just saying it's a little weird. It's a little weird.
I think that like last one sounds like the most likely. Like once you've had a test, it's very, very hard to then go and do something because then you're breaking all kinds of laws, and that's really rough.
Yes, it would have been very strict in Korea, but it does seem like if 4 out of your 5 members were not feeling well the day of, and they said now in retrospect that they felt ill, that there wasn't any test given is sus.
It's normally you actually test anyway. Like
exactly
for us, all of us before going to the studio, we always test anyway. So it could be that like, they just didn't come up, right?
But really, you think 4 people who are exhibiting symptoms of feeling ill all came back negative? I find that very
exhibiting symptoms. That's hard. Yeah, that's tough.
I find that very.
But I mean, quick tests can be really, really weird sometimes. Like really weird.
Anyway, it's neither here nor there. Like I'm glad they felt well enough to play the finals. I'm glad they played the finals.
Thank God.
But I did think that they looked worse in these finals and did play a lot more flippy than I have seen them play in the past.
Dude, here's the thing though. Go on. Yeah, go on, Mac. Make your point.
Sorry. But I think the dragon control was like for sure shaky. The thing about T1 that's really weird to me though is that like, so I think their early game is like insane. I think they're god tier in the early game. But throughout this like whole split, they're like one of the only LCK teams that I've consistently watched because I tend to prefer LPL. But they're a big departure from like the traditional LCK model team in that they actually play the game really fast, and not even fast in like a fast but like kind of measured and very controlled way. They actually make a lot of really high risk decisions. Like their willingness to just like start a 5v5 Nasher and like not even like turn, just be like, well, we're going to win the 50-50. Like they do it a lot. They do it a lot. The thing is that like they're actually just individually good enough to make it happen. Like watching T1's games, I feel like they have a few like really redeeming qualities in the mid game, right? One of the big ones is their resource upkeep, like their ability to, like I was watching, I think it was game one, and at 25 minutes there were literally like 3 players with on the verge of 10 CS per minute, plus the jungler is like 20 CS ahead. Like their ability to like consistently and efficiently cycle camps and take waves and retake vision and reset at the right time in order to catch the most waves possible is really, really good. So you often end up in like in League of Legends, it's usually most teams cannot funnel resources into 4 players. Most teams can funnel resources into 3, right? So 3 laners plus jungler. You have to choose 3, typically speaking. T1 is one of the few teams alongside with EDG where they actually don't tend to choose unless they're in a game where they're like, like top lane is really behind and bot lane is really ahead early, then obviously they funnel. But actually, they're one of the few teams that's capable of having such insanely high resource upkeep over multiple lanes, like over 4 players, which is a big factor for them. But when I watch their games, I never feel like I'm watching like revolutionary macro like geniuses. I never feel like I'm looking at anything that's like super special. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just feel like they're doing the fundamentals well and the basics well. But actually, I just feel like their games are like a succession of really small outplays that just seem to go in their favor. Like all the 50-50 situations just seem to go in their favor like 70% of the time. I think their execution and their team fighting is just so damn good that they basically just need like good fundamentals and high resource upkeep, and then they win against everyone in team fights.
I think the other thing that really helps them is that in situations where, as you're saying, with funneling resources, many teams would be in an even gold state, because T1 will make macro decisions in the early game that somehow just magically make like 3,000 gold leads because they're so good at cross mapping. By the time they get to a team fight, they can play more aggressively because they have leads that most other teams just don't have at that point in time. Like if you think you're being proactive and killing somebody on team 1, usually there's something going horrendously wrong for you on the other side of the map that wouldn't normally happen against most other teams.
Yeah. And to their credit, I think they're also incredibly decisive when they have leads, right? Like we talked about Faker's realm warp usage earlier, for example, and that is like really S tier. Like if you're a player that wants to learn how to use realm warp, you should watch Faker because it's really, really, really good. And the number of teams that they consistently catch out, and just like the game will be like an even or like 2 or 3k lead, like you said, and they will literally just realm warp into 5 people and ace them and end the game. Like the number of those games is really high for T1.
I want to talk about a player on the losing team, though, because if you ever want to talk about a player who is the definition of wasted potential, it has got to be Peanut. Yeah, this guy, for real, had the youth, the opportunity, and the skill set to be the greatest jungler to ever play League of Legends. Look how many times, repeatedly, he has been in top 3 teams, in big finals, at Worlds, in semis. In fact, like, I know he's won a few. He has won a few, obviously, when he was in Kings or Longzhu, etc. Like, but man, this guy's fucking missed so many times in his career. He's just the guy where you put him in the big match and you just know you bet your house on the other guy, mate. I've just seen it happen too many times. Dude, he's playing fucking signature champion in almost every game. He's playing the Lee Sin. That is the pop-off champion of all time. Where are the pop-offs? There aren't any. It's a final, mate.
Look, I think
you've seen him fucking shit in the bed your whole career.
I think he wasn't terrible, but the problem with Peanut is in these high stakes scenarios against very good teams, he will just die randomly and stupidly, or like a gank won't work and he'll sacrifice himself, and it puts the team really far behind. So I think his decision making is really suspect. I think, part of this was Doran's fault because Thorin was opting into a Camille Jace matchup and needed the early gank that they didn't get, which then caused the Viego to like snowball out of control because Owner is smart in the way that he counter jungled. But he'll be it's like in the Dom1 series, he's just like randomly recalling on a ward in the enemy jungle and just dies. And it's like that's a choice you're making. Like it doesn't have to be like that. And for me, what Peanut does is that when he gets nervous, he starts to cut corners and play sloppy. And That is just when you're against a good team, that will just be punished. And it's happened consistently throughout his career, even when he wins titles, right?
Yeah, true.
It's not like he's never won a title. He's won multiple titles,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's just that he doesn't play clean in high pressure situations. And that is the big, big downside to him as a player.
Yeah. I mean, you can also look at like the 50-50 smites and things like that in this series, which, I mean, I didn't count them, but there were a few situations where like it went the way of T1 when it didn't have to and it perhaps shouldn't have. Like game 1, for example, Gen.G had 2 dragons and like its Infernal Soul, which is like the highest value soul. Unless I'm mistaken. It could be outdated, but it used to be at least. But like they have literally 4 chances to get the dragon, and part of it is a team thing, but part of it is also like they have 2 fights where they kill someone, and then there's a fight that I watched like 3 times because I was really like weirded out by it, where someone is in stopwatch, I can't remember who, and the team is waiting to kill them, and when they get out, Peanut chases them like top. He chases them like up instead of down towards the dragon, which T1 is like finishing the dragon at this moment, and he would be in range to just smite the dragon if he were there. And like there's times, I think there were 2 or 3 times in that game where T1 took the dragon like without their jungler being there, when Peanut probably could have actually been in range or could have made decisions differently to put himself in range to actually take the dragon. And then yeah, like in that instance, he ended up flashing for it and doesn't secure it. But there were a lot of things there that like looked like they were really, really small in the moment decision making mistakes that I think made a big impact on the series.
So one thing I hate is when people do that thing where they act like if you're better in one regard, you're better in every regard. Like people really did act like Koreans were fucking like gods who came from another planet to Earth, and they're not even humans like we are. Like I don't think people realize even some of the greatest Korean players have been chokers or underperformers. Like I'll give you 3 names off the top of my head: Peanut, Khan, and Deft. There we go. Anyone who likes these players know they all could have been the best player ever at their role. And by the way, they're so good. They still stacked tons of championships. Fucking made it to Worlds. I mean, fucking some of them even were in like finals, semi-final. But even the greatest players, like that's one thing I don't think people get about mentality. Mentality doesn't scale with skill. It's not like because you like last. In fact, that discussion we had earlier, Max, the best example. Like that thing that I talked about, how essentially, if you listen to Odo, it sounds like they sort of like almost like fucking nudged Larson in the back on Silas to do something finally. Like if the joke is if I could control Larson, he'd be a mega aggressive player. Look how good his skills are. But in his mind though, he thinks of himself differently than maybe I think of his skill set. So it's not always the case. Like you can be a very skilled player, but your mental might just be completely off the reservation, might be up and down, who knows. I always think that's the part people underestimate, because what they don't realize is this: you can't work on that the same way as you can work on the rest of your game. Like you're not going to be in that situation again till you're there next time. Like, what do you think on this topic, Mac? Obviously, you've been through people who've had their problems at Worlds or in playoff matches before. What do you think on this topic?
I mean, some of it comes with experience. Some of it comes with having the right atmosphere around a person. You know, them feeling like they're trusted, them feeling like they're encouraged to actually make the big plays, and that it's okay if they fuck up, and that like the rest of their teammates don't mind. So a lot of that comes from like a big degree of trust. A lot of it comes from, I think, a lot of it comes from like the atmosphere that you as a staff decide to create, like the coaching philosophy that you approach it with. You know, I always like tell my players that I would prefer to see them dying together in the enemy jungle, you know, like I don't care. And that like realistically, I don't care if they make mistakes. If they make mistakes, I care about the fact that like they reset, they go into the next player and they start talking and they fix it, right? Like that's never the like the focus for me is not like you fucked up. You need to do this differently next time. You need to not make this aggressive play. It's like, okay, you fucked up, it didn't work out. This is potentially why. Think about this in the future. But did you start talking afterwards? Like after you make this mistake, did you just stop talking? Because if you did, then you're not doing your job. You're dead. Like you're dead for 30 seconds, 40 seconds. Could be as much as you want. Like you should be the one that's talking the most and actually making a plan to fix whatever just went wrong, right? So I think some of it is that. A lot of it, like even with that mindset, can be just like comes with time. You know, we definitely had that in Mad 2020. Did we go to Worlds and have a horrible time at Worlds? Yeah, absolutely. And some of that is also about like not to excuse Mad Lions in that year. Like we had a rough Worlds, and I had a rough Worlds personally for sure. But a lot of it is also about like the systems that you put in place around people to be able to like give them a degree of comfort, give them a degree of confidence, give them a degree of like familiarity with situations, and make sure that they are playing their most comfortable champions, to make sure that the like practice environment stays the same, make sure that the type of feedback they're getting stays the same, all this type of stuff, which long story short, at World Championships, especially that year in China, because there was quarantine and there was limited visas and stuff like this, we had a lot less control over, and that's usually the case at international championships, like international tournaments. You have a lot less control over your immediate environment. And so losing that control can make players feel really uncomfortable, and it can put a huge amount of strain on them if they're dealing with jet lag plus quarantine plus food they don't like plus whatever, all of these things that you tend to like try very hard to control in their environment. And getting used to that, like actually traveling, because I mean, you know, some of these players, like I've had players that have never left their home country before coming to the LEC, and like getting used to that, like going to China in 2020 during the COVID pandemic, during all of this stuff, like it was really scary because like no one really knew that much about COVID at that point, and like it was super serious. And you know, there was like talk of, you know, if your temperature goes up above a certain point, then you're going to go to a hospital in China, and you're like, holy shit, I'm going to be in this like room where I don't speak like any Chinese, and like no one really speaks that much English, although people try. But like there's a lot of factors, and like not only experience in game and experience on big stages with crowds, things like that, but also like life experience of being comfortable with traveling, being able to sleep in a like hotel bedroom that you aren't comfortable with, having different food, things like this makes a huge impact over the long run, which is why I think that, yeah, a lot of it does just come with time. But I think the mental game is something you can work on. I do think it's actually something you can actively work on, and I think there are like lots of examples of people who do like overcome their like mental problems. I'm not talking esports wise. I don't know people that in depth, right? But like there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books about it from sports psychologists, and there's a lot that you can do. And a big one is the one that we mentioned earlier, like self-talk. You know, like how you actually see yourself and how you speak to yourself. There's a whole kettle of fish there. There's a whole can of worms I can open there. I could talk about that for hours and hours.
But it's the same thing. I think we talk about Peanut and kind of his historic playoff performance, but what we don't talk about is Chovy. You know, Chovy at some point has to live up to the hype and the potential. Chovy has now lost what, 5 finals in Korea?
Final, yeah.
He's lost every final he's ever played, and he's lost 3 of them to Faker. Now he lost 2 on Griffin to Faker. He lost to KT. He lost to Damwon, and even at Worlds, he's never made it past quarters. And he's been in the last 3 Worlds. Like, he's done it with 3 different teams. Like, at what point do we have to ask? Because for me, Chovy is a wonderful player to watch in terms of champion pool. He's a wonderful laner. He's a good team fighter. But what seems to me to be missing from Chovy's game is the macro instinct that Faker has. Like, Faker will find the vulnerability and push that advantage. Chovy just looks clueless a lot of the time. He brute forces an advantage, but he has no finesse to his macro play. He has no finesse to the way that he plays the map or enables his lanes. And to me, that's the biggest difference in what's really preventing him from being a better player, is that I think, frankly, he's a bad teammate. I think he's a bad teammate when it comes to enabling.
Make stuff happen. Some players make stuff happen, and some players kind of like will always look good and low-key sell their teammates out in order to look good, even though it's not like their intention, right? It's not like they're a bad teammate because they're a bad person. It's a bad teammate because their playstyle actually doesn't like contribute to winning as a team. It contributes to them looking good individually. With Chovy, like it could be many things, right? It could be the case of like, I mean, if that is the case with him and that he does have a problem with pressure or whatever it is, or he does have a problem with, let's say it's like that he's soaking too many CS and he's not joining his teammates on plays when he's supposed to, or not proactively making plays happen in a finessed, nuanced way. In that case, pairing him with Peanut is really risky. If we also think that Peanut is like wasted potential in that sense, right, and has a problem with pressure, that's a really bad pairing on a 2v2 level. And so maybe it's something that like needs compensation for, either through environment, self-work, or just if it can't be worked on in that way, through actually just pairing him with the right pieces to support him, you know?
I mean, I was going to say, on one level, I actually have always thought it's a bit of a fucking slip-up that LS loves this guy so much and is always all in on him being the best mid laner. Because it's like, motherfucker, if this wasn't the player that I did the nameplate on, you would hate this guy. You're the person who picks junglers and mid laners on the basis of things like what they can do and understanding of the game, and do they know? This guy doesn't know anything. Now, yes, in solo queue, he's a god, of course. That ain't in the competitive games, though. Like, whatever he's doing in solo queue mid-game, that isn't happening in these LCK games. But the joke joke is, the reason why it makes perfect sense that LS likes this guy is because this guy also has the worst taste ever in who he picks to be around him. He picks the worst fucking teammates of all time in his teams. Because there's the problem, Monty. Every single one of those teams you listed in a final has minimum one fucking massive hole in it. Whether it's Sword, whether it's fucking Thorin, Pioche. Give me a break. Can I ever get a break? Can this guy just play with normal people who are really good at League of Legends? Is that too much to ask? Because I'll tell you what, you look at the careers of people like Faker, the other great players, like lots of them do a good job also of like making the right pivots, getting the right people onto the team, kicking the right. This guy seems like a solo queue god. Like he goes, just put any 4 players with me and then we'll just win, I guess. Like that isn't League of Legends, for fuck's sake, not from Korea at least. Like here's the joke. This guy's the most obvious LPL fucking mid laner of all time. Just fuck off to the LPL and just farm out and play all your picks and play as selfishly as you want, and then they'll have to just build a team where the jungler ganks for you all the time. Probably have to buy Malrang. You'll have a top player who just plays weak side all the. Yeah, well, you get it. That could work. But these don't work in LCK, mate. Like I'm sick of it because basically Chovy is fucking mid lane Alfari. He will always do amazingly in lane. He will do amazingly in all his matchups. He knows loads of matchups. But then what? But then is he? Here's the thing. Neither of them are bad in team fights. Neither of them are bad out of lane, but they're no longer the best. You know what I mean? That's the problem. It's the drop off, and the fact that no one ever addresses it is a part of the problem for me. It's like that's why I'll give up the credit. Okay, Alfari didn't have that great a split, but there's more to the game than just laning, guys. Come on.
Yeah, ultimately you can't be a star player that doesn't actually like force the team to win games. You know, your star player has to be the guy that when shit gets really hard, drags the rest of the team against their will, if necessary, across the goddamn finish line and does what needs to be done. And I think a lot of players, and like this is something that you just hit on really well, I think, which is that a lot of players are very like tunnel visioned or internally focused. And I think a lot of people think that even though League of Legends is obviously a team sport where communication is arguably more important than like any other sport in the world, like people often think, and I think many players think, that their job is to turn up and play League of Legends and play it well. And that's not your job if you're a League of Legends player. Your job is also to be the best teammate possible and to help your teammates in whatever way that is, whether that's supporting them or helping them communicate better or leading them in game or making them look good or sacrificing for them or whatever, like whatever you can possibly do. Like the greatest players will find a way to do it. And it doesn't matter if it's like supposed to be their job. If it's not their responsibility, they'll just do it because it needs to be done. And that's what it takes to win. And like, that's the drive that you need to be a great player.
It's also that
there's I don't know if you know this, Monty. That's the killer right there. That's actually why, for real, I actually think this is LS's biggest blind spot ever. Because, dude, normally you have to speculate, don't you? Well, who can know what the communication is like? We don't speak Korean. You know, it's famous that Chovy doesn't speak, and that in his last team, he essentially wasn't even speaking in like LCK games, and people start to figure out what to do around him. Like, so the mid laner, that's the best laner ever at mid, doesn't speak to the jungler. I'm out already. I don't need to have any comment. I don't need to have a debate back and forth. Well, counterpoint. You know what? You take Peanut, you fuck off, and I'll take any other players. Like, that's never going to win. It's fucking Korean League of Legends. Probably the most famous region ever for synchronizing all the players and coming and having the best fucking vision control. This guy isn't doing it. And then the one last thing I'll say is this. Here's why I also get the vibe this is a solo queue player. Because how does no one ever bring this up? Dude, the amount of games that Chovy has where he has the pick to carry and then he does a build that's like a supportive build. And you look at the comp and you're like, there's no way you discuss this build with the coach. The coach would never build this, like, would never tell you to do like a no damage build on this shot. Like, he did builds so it's like for him and what he's thinking of doing in the game. It's like, bro, like, we're not gonna have Thorin carry the game. Like, what is this?
It just looks to me, even in the Gen.G win in the final, that he just doesn't communicate what he's going to do to his teammates or shot call even around himself. Like he appears to me to be incapable of even telling his teammates, I'm ahead. This is what I need in order for us to win the game. Like he refuses to give people directions to even play around himself because it always results in some insane mechanical performance, right? Like he will do a thing, but it doesn't look like his teammates necessarily know what the thing he is going to do is. And that to me is like one of the most tilting aspects of watching him play is his advantages are wasted. And when someone else has an advantage on his team, he doesn't necessarily facilitate it. So I'm not sure.
He needs a role swapped mid laner to go and play a different lane and shot call for him. That's what he needs.
People have said this the last couple of years, but it is obvious. He should just be a top laner.
Yeah,
it's so fucking obvious. Like this guy, the role was made for you, homie. Just get the fuck up in that lane, and yeah, guess what? When you don't talk, then you're gonna have a really bad game. By the way, you're not in mid lane now, mate. You can't run under that short tower and fucking survive anymore. I tell you what, he'll tell you what, Monty. 6 months of top lane in Korea, and he'll be the most communicative player of all time. He'll be his jungle's best friend, fucking getting him like ramen all day long, fucking little presents, gifts. Oh, how you doing? Oh, just wanted to check you're all right there, Peanut. Yeah, exactly. That's how you turn this guy's game around.
Plus, he could just go join T1, and that way he wouldn't have to play against Faker anymore, which is his kryptonite. So
by the way, if Faker actually pulls the perks and just recruits Chovy to play top lane on his team, that would be at that point you just shut it down. Like just the game. Faker completed League of Legends at that point in time. Like, right, I should actually agree to close the game down, start League of Legends 2, and then we can all get on with the new one.
League of Legends has then been solved. You know, like this is the answer. We have it.
Yeah,
but I mean, on a serious note, mid lane is a 3v3 lane. Like it just is. Like if you can't be the best laner if you cannot like be the best laner with your jungler and support, because part of your decision making as a mid laner is what's my jungler doing and how can I help him. It doesn't matter if you're 10 CS up if your jungler isn't in the game, because if your jungler isn't in the game, then like you're probably not winning the mid 2v2 anyway, and then your top laner might be fucked, which is what happened in the series against them.
By the way, here's the joke. Here's what you do if you're Riot. You've got so much time, you could even set this up for real, make a note. What you do is, if T1 wins Worlds and Faker wins Worlds again, this time like fucking 9 years later, what you do is this. The second the Nexus explodes, it goes to a weird loading screen, and then it just loads all the players into the first version of Summoner's Rift, and the joke is he completed the game. And then you just shut down League of Legends and you start the next game. That would be the most god-tier viral ending to a game ever in the history of the world, because it would be so fitting. It's like, right, Faker's closed the game down for us, he's completed it, he gets the top score, he's got all the worlds, all the LCK. Yeah, that would be the shit.
No, actually, what they're going to do, the more Riot thing to do, is just to cut away from T1's victory celebration and then put an advertisement for the MOBA in there and just say League of Legends is over, now go play our MOBA.
And then
what if they turn Faker into an anime character? You know, not like make an anime about him, but actually turn him like into a hologram or something.
Look, all I'm going to say is the fact that Riot hasn't figured out how to make like a League of Legends esports visual novel yet, they're just leaving money.
Oh, do you want to know something sad? I'm just going to give you one last little rant and then we'll wrap this episode, do the viewer questions. Do you want to know one of the saddest moments ever where someone who, it was an obvious slam dunk and he missed on this one, right? 2 years ago when they had the super team in G2 and they had all those amazing storylines and narratives and great characters, I actually told Carlos on Twitter, you know, mate, you should just do a fucking manga about these players. Like, you've got all the whole Uma Jun thing with fucking thing. I told him, you know what, if you get someone to draw it, I'll fucking write the script for free, but he just forgot about it and never did it. That would have been the shit. Could you imagine that team of Yargos and Wood? Think about all the memes you could even build in it. It'd be so good. It'd be so fucking mega, wouldn't it?
The puppets were dope, though. The puppets were
pretty good.
They were great.
Indeed. Should we end this segment and do viewer questions, Monty?
Yep. Thanks, Mac, for coming on the show. Appreciate your insight. It's been fun.
All good. Thank you very much, guys.
By the way, not only is this viewer questions, but one thing I will mention, you'll notice I didn't do it in the segment that wasn't sponsored by esports.bet, which is we will actually have a watch party for the LEC Final on Sunday. So there'll be more on Twitter. I'll tell you all the jazz and where you go and all this, but we will have one of our first like sponsor deliverables, basically. So you can watch the game live potentially with us as we discuss it.
Yep. So follow the channels, especially on Twitch, because that's where it's going to be. And join the Discord. And you can go to the Grogcoin channel to learn how you, too, can ask questions. So let's go with the first one. If asked which region was the best in League these past 4 years, nearly everyone would say the LPL because they have won 3 out of 4 Worlds, but I think one could make a compelling argument for the LCK. Yes, I think you can. It's been close. In Season 11, which was last year, 4 LCK teams made quarters as opposed to 2 LPL teams, and Dom1 and T1 seemed to consistently overpower their opponents, whereas EDG seemed shaky despite being clutch. I think that's true. Most people thought they were going to lose the finals as well. Before they pulled it out. And also that was kind of a choke from Dom1. In Season 9, which would have been 2019, Dom1 dominated scrims and mega choked while Griffin had no coach. Also true. And they also subbed in a different top laner than they played with during Worlds, which was weird. That's my sidebar. Also, there were stylistic mismatches according to Diogenes. SKT is greater than FPX. G2 is greater than SKT. FPX is greater than G2.
This question is cancer for me, by the way. At the moment, I'm just being hit by fan logic constantly, over and over, like fucking Chinese water torch. Like, please make it stop. So let me check. So first of all, Griffin choose not to use a top laner. Therefore, Korea is the best region. They just chose not to field a good top laner. What are you talking about, you moron? Here's my question. How did a player with a shit top laner get to Worlds, you fucking imbecile? That implies the region is garbage. And then you're going, oh, well, but Doinby even said SKT's better than Fit. We're not going off imaginary scrim books, you moron. We're going off real things happening in the game. I don't care. I can find you a million stories. I've told everyone this. Half the time they don't even tell the truth. They just say a vague set of adjectives like it's going pretty well in scrims. It's interesting. You don't even know what that translates to. That could be I'm losing 70% of scrims. You think that means I'm winning. So then there's the whole thing. Like, notice he's already done the flawed baked in assumption, which goes, the region that has the teams on average make it the furthest is the best. Says who? What does that even mean? The genius of this, by the way, is when all y'all tried to argue when Dom won that they were the best, you went off just the best team wins. The best team makes the region the best. Then it goes, because obviously the LPL was fucking like a motherfucker every time. Then the one time the LPL doesn't make it, because spoiler, they all went on the same side of the bracket. You're like, I think LCK is better. It's like, look, it's debatable, but like this is the amount of copium in this question. Read the end. I
think there are some. The Griffin coach scandal was bullshit at the time.
It's a different story, Monty, right? Let's say, let me go. You can pick all your elite teams, right? Who's going to have more elite teams for the last 4 years? LPL or LCK? It's easy. There's twice as many. If people don't know, here's what happens in the LPL. You don't even go back to Worlds because you don't even fucking qualify. It's so hard to get one of those 3 or 4 spots. That, like, go look at the bracket now. If people don't know, the champions of last split and the world reigning champions couldn't even make top 4 in fucking LPL. Yep. It is a murderer's row, that fucking playoff format. It's a nightmare.
I do think that overall, like, I do think T1 will probably win MSI based on what we've seen from LPL so far, but we also haven't seen the top LPL teams play in the playoffs yet, which is going to happen.
No one can really know who's going to make it from LPL at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. Also, V5 does look really good and rookies popping off. The other one was in Season 8, KT versus IG was very close. Seems like if KT wins that series, they win the whole tournament. I think that's definitely true. The real world final was the quarterfinal that year. That is a true statement. Whether that makes Korea better or not as an entire region, I don't know. But I do think it has been close overall. And I will say Korean...
Wait a minute. That's a real one he added in there. That's the maddest fan logic of all. So he's taking an if and he's changing the result and that makes them the best. Are you ready, Monty? You know, if KT had beaten IG, they win Worlds. How about RNG, the team that won MSI at both fucking splits, and then like 3 of them played in the bloody Asian games and won that as well. They were about to complete like the golden year, you fucking morons. That's the what if. The what if is what if RNG wins. Spoiler, they win the whole tournament. That's it. It's over. Come on, man. Why are we taking what ifs? What is this shit?
I do think the regions have been close, though, but I agree that LPL...
It was exaggerated, of course, yes.
Yeah. I think LPL has been better. And also, I think last year, I think, is the closest argument, because most people would have had Dom1 favored going into the finals pretty heavily after the series versus T1. Dom1, I think, underperformed in the finals. I think EDG... I'm not sure overperformed is the right word. I think that they maybe underperformed previously to the finals compared to what we had seen domestically. So, if LoL had a World Cup style tournament after Worlds every year, has there been a year since Season 2 where Korea would not have won?
LPL! Oh, I can't do this anymore, man. First of all, that is the most boring premise in League of Legends. The reason they think it's amazing, Monty, is they only give it 5 minutes thought. So what they do is they go, well, Denmark could be good, and I feel Sweden... By the way, even Sweden falls apart instantly. Go on, and name me 5 players for Sweden that can compete against anyone in Korea. Spoiler, you've got Reckless, and that's about it. So that's
just a question whether Korea would have won, not won. Well, I mean, I think... in 2018, Korea literally lost the Asia games to the Chinese roster. So there you go. They were already losing to Chinese teams with full Korean rosters. So it's possible that we don't even ask this question, guys. You're going to see the Asia games this year. We're going to watch them before Worlds, like right before Worlds in 2022. There will be games that will likely be played between China and Korea on the Worlds patch. So we don't have to wonder. We can just know.
By the way, I'll just throw this in there. All I'll say is this. You're totally right. If all Koreans only played in Korea, Korea would be a much greater region. Now do EU and NA. Right, go on, next question. Oh, it's a bit of a bummer, that one, when you think about it, isn't it? Yeah. Imagine how trash NA would be if you had no EU players, you moron. So, go on, let's do the next question.
With G2's April Fool's joke announcing their fast food chain, Carlos has tasked you to name a meal with a G2 theme. What meal do you choose, and what do you name it? Oh, man.
I mean, it's obviously going to have to be something about all three, isn't it, in the final or whatever. So, like... I'd probably do this, Monty. I'd have something where it was a 3-course meal. The starter, it's exotic, it's exciting. The entree, it's meaty. It's got something you can really sink your teeth in. It's well cooked. The dessert's just absolute shit. There's just almost nothing there. That's G2 international tournaments. There you go.
My G2 fast food meal, they actually don't serve this anymore. It was really good a few years ago. It was a Jamaican style goat curry. They had the goat, and it was really, really spicy and absolutely delicious. But a couple years ago, they decided that they couldn't serve us goat anymore, so it's not there. Who ran into a wall harder, Liquid trying to beat Astralis in 2018 or Dale Earnhardt? Wow, that is messed up, man. That is messed up. You can answer that question, Thorin. Liquid tried to beat Astralis in 2018. That's a CS question.
That was pretty bad, because if people don't know, they lost every single time. I think they won like 1B or 1, but they lost every single series. Yeah.
That is a classic butt pounder 420. Very inappropriate question. Greatest esports GOAT, Simple, Faker, Rafa, or potentially somebody else?
I think
Flash obviously would be the
I mean, the funny thing is, that's actually now become a way more interesting question, because it probably is between Simple, Faker, and Flash, and then you have to just weigh up the eras, the game, and all that. Like, one of them's a team, two of them are team games, for example. The problem with Flash is this: because Flash plays a single-player game, and with all the best players, because they're all Korean, and in an amazing set, he kind of just has a lot of edges, in my opinion. Like, it's hard to beat him with the others, you know. Like, for example, oh my god, imagine this: sometimes Faker wasn't always the best on team one when they won.
Yep.
You know, it's not hating. So
also,
I think it's an interesting debate you could have for sure.
Also, for several of Faker's world championships, winning worlds was actually easier than winning his
domestic
titles.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem with worlds, guys. Is everybody's like, I love worlds. The problem is, like, winning LCK or winning LPL, depending on the year, is actually fucking harder than winning worlds. So the value of winning worlds is actually lower most of the time, which is really weird. But because there isn't an open qualification where any team can technically qualify, it makes international tournaments in League of Legends extremely hard to judge compared to domestic competition.
Thing is, though, I think actually if I had to pick of the three, despite the fact technically he's the least accomplished of the three, I might actually pick Simple, because if people don't know, his just day-to-day level is just, I mean, I think he's the only one in the game that you can actually do this, but his day-to-day level is just impossible. It is like Michael Jordan shit, where like almost every day you're just the best player.
I think at the current time, Simple is the best player in any esport right now.
And for so many years as well, mate. He's done it for like 5-6 years in a row now. It's mental.
Yeah, I think Faker did have a time in like 2013 through 2015 that Faker was the best player in any esport.
Agreed.
I do think that Simple is currently the best player in any esport. What happened to Piccaboo? He turned around KT for half of one split, then went to live in the woods. Piccaboo comes from a pretty wealthy family, so he just, I think, didn't want to do it anymore and didn't
he have RSI as well or something? He had some sort of like wrist issue or something.
Yeah, he had some injuries, but he wasn't, I don't think, I know Piccaboo, like I know him personally, his English was pretty good, and he's like a really nice guy, but I just don't think, I think he had like a safety net, pretty substantial safety net, and so he just kind of moved on with his life.
He was a wicked player, though. He was a fucking bag of fresh, wasn't he?
Yeah, really, really great player. Socrates or Diogenes? I haven't actually, well, okay, guys. Technically, I haven't read much Socrates because we don't have surviving text.
Might not even have existed. Might just be made up Plato's imaginary friend magically winning every straw man argument.
I was going to say, I haven't read I've read Socrates, but not much Diogenes, but I technically have not read Socrates. But I have read more of Socrates' thoughts than Diogenes. So I will go with Socrates.
Fuck this whole question. The guy asking's never read either. Fuck off. I'm not going to entertain that bullshit. Oh, you prefer Diogenes to City? Shut the fuck up. Exactly.
Thorin's very angry at our viewer questions today. You are retiring. Scenario. You are retiring. What is the last esports related event, activity, interview, whatever you would like to do as a capstone to end your career? What would perfectly encapsulate your presence and impact on the scene? Doing my own content. I'm tired of fucking doing like this. I like this, where I can do whatever the fuck I want on my own time, on my own shows, where I don't have to kowtow to a developer or a tournament organizer or anything else. I only want to do things that I am in control of from this point forward in my career, period. If I do not have control, I do not want to do it. So just doing this is great. This means I've won, guys. I don't have to take Riot's shit rates. I can just make content that people enjoy with real fucking opinions. And that's it. I win. So this basically is the answer, but maybe maybe a nicer version of this in the studio or something like that.
Yeah, it'd be somewhat similar, like just do like a documentary I always wanted to do on some player, like, I don't know, fucking Device or Simple or someone who I've had a personal connection with, they've done a lot of things in their career. The other angle, but obviously it's never going to happen, as you saw from the Flashpoint project, is I would like to actually run one really big tier 1 LAN with all the big teams. I've never been able to do it my whole career. And when I did work with the people who did, the ESLs of the world or the E-Leagues, the amount of control and like input they allowed you was so infinitesimal, you can't even imagine. Like when people used to rave and be like, wow, I love those videos you do with ESL would tell me, write 3 sentences. That's your purview. You have 3 sentences. Like, I need to have fucking 10 minutes to do something. Like, I have 3 sentences. Give me a break. That's like a Chovy best of 5, whatever. You see the joke there? Keep going.
I think that is funny. I think the thing about Flashpoint, at least, like, the creative vision was there, but we never got the chance to actually do it with players, which was a core part of it. So that was a bummer, but maybe in the future that will happen. At what point, if ever, does Bengi stop being in the fan conversation for GOAT LoL player? I can't believe this conversation still happens. There was a Reddit thread today, oh my god, no, asking who people thought would be second greatest of all time with the assumption that Faker is first. Yes, that is true. And that was immediately followed by another thread title, why isn't Bengi mentioned as Faker or other players like Rookie and Uzi? Guys, stop.
That's the problem, though, Monty. The problem is this. Anytime you make a list, it's going to go number of world championships, and he is always going to have 3. And the problem is, Monty, even the greatest players of all time, minus Faker, don't have 3. So it's going to make a fan, it's always going to break their brain because they're going to go, but Rookie has 1. Like, it's like, who gives a shit? He's obviously way better than Diogenes. Come on.
I am praying that Faker can win his first Worlds without Bengi this year.
Agreed.
So that we can finally put this conversation to bed. And by the way, guys, what ends up happening is that my points, whenever this conversation is brought up, my points are inevitably misconstrued around what I think about Bengi. Bengi was a great player. He is a good player. But the problem with Bengi is he was never, ever, 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 ever a complete jungler. And had he been on any other team, he would not have been as good because he needed Faker. He was a Faker enabler. And that was wonderful. That synergy was rare. It was perfect. It was great. It was great, guys. But the thing is, he never could play very mechanically intensive junglers a lot of the time. And also, you can make a very good argument that any year that Faker was winning, if Bengi was replaced by a different jungler, a different Korean jungler, the results would have been exactly the same. He was never at any point the key factor that was pushing T1 over the top. It was always Faker.
So try this thought exercise. Here's the thought exercise, right? Monty just did it there. What if Faker had a different jungler? I'll go the other way. What if Bengi played his whole career with Kuro? How many worlds do you think he has? Shut the fuck up, exactly.
The only thing that would have happened is if Bengi was with Kuro, is that they would have had excellent vision control to watch themselves get their ass kicked.
Exactly, yes.
They would have had front row tickets. They would have had excellent insight into exactly why they were fucking losing these games, okay? Yes. So I like Bengi a lot. Okay, he's still a coach on T1. Actually, I'm pretty sure Bengi would be a great coach because he has a great sense of the macro aspects of the game. I'm sure Bengi's actually probably a pretty damn good coach. Was he a very, very good jungler? Yes. Was he a jungler that was insanely limited by his style? And people will point to the Nidalee game at Worlds where he had to come in clutch. Why was that even necessary? Why did he spend years of his career when Nidalee was a pick, not being able to play the champion? And just because he played one game and won on it, because T1 Coma admitted that they forgot to fucking ban that champion. It's not like his coach thought he could play it, guys, and they just ended up having to play it. That's not a plus for Bengi. That's what the fuck happened for years before that point that caused that point to occur.
And they had a sleeper agent because it was fucking Peanut on the other side. All I'm saying is, I've said this a million times, no one's ever done it, Monty. Here's what you do. You go watch that game 5 and you do not watch Bengi's Nidalee. You watch how Peanut plays that game and you're going to be so underwhelmed, it'll be unreal. This guy was like just waiting to give that fucking game up to anyone who played. It was mental.
And also, you have to consider the thought experiment of if Score had been on this team and they weren't giga limited in the way they could play the game, in a way, it was a handicap in some senses for Faker. Now, the play style enabled Faker, but the fact that Bengi on your roster warps your draft in really fucking weird ways, we don't even know what that would have looked like had, maybe Faker would have won harder if they had more bans to help Faker. Like, who knows? Anyway, that's the rant. Bengi's a good player. And everybody who's saying it's not one or the other, guys, he's not either among the greatest of all time or shit. He was a very good player that just simply isn't in the conversation for greatest player ever. It's not an insult. It's not a fucking insult. He's just not up there with like Rookie and Faker. That's it. It's a short list. And he was almost never the best jungler at any point in time in his career. I think there's probably a couple points you can
first year, maybe you can make.
Yeah, you can make some argument, but even domestically, he was not the best jungler. Okay, so that's that. That was the last question. We'll see you next week.
Watch party.
We'll see you at the watch party on Sunday for LEC. We'll have
5 p.m. CET.
We'll have some more content on the channel. Also, next week we will have an episode to wrap up LEC and preview LCS finals is what we'll be doing, and talk about LPL playoff final preview. And the week after that, we'll be able to talk about LCS and LPL finals, which will happen that weekend. Allegedly, LPL, I don't know, Shanghai's kind of in a rough state right now with the whole pandemic. So who knows what that's going on with, if those finals will actually be held as scheduled. But we'll keep you up to date. Again, watch party on Sunday. Goodbye.